Chapter 1079. In the ruins of the pass. Jeep tried his best to adjust his breathing. He put a sharp arrow on the bowstring and looked around vigilantly. It was obvious that the battle between the two cavalry units wouldn't be intense. However, no one would have expected that one of the cavalry units would hide and assassinate in the ruins while the other would search the ruins under constant suppressive fire. In Frost Mirror language, Jeep was a godly archer. Generally speaking, unless the children of the Shuangjian dynasty were born with top-notch bloodlines, they would not have a name when they were born. Similarly, after they reached adulthood, the tribe's wise men and leaders would give them names according to their achievements in battle. For example, Brave Oral and Kub and Mighty Oral and Kub were the two names that appeared most frequently. After all, if a mortal could successfully kill a demon beast, he deserved such a name. But at the same time, because such names appeared so frequently, to the people of Frost Mirror language, these two names were no different from Ergo or Denyo. Jeeb was very satisfied with his name, because he had risked his life to get it. At that time, he was still a mortal who had not stepped on the path of cultivation, but he had hunted down a demon beast of the wisdom state with his sharp archery, flexible mind, and various traps that he had set up in advance. At this moment, Jeeb, who was escorted into the ruins by the black-armored cavalry, suddenly felt like he had returned to his youth. He was just like the mortal boy who was targeted by a wisdom state demon beast. It could even be said that the situation now was much more dangerous than that time. There was no feeling of reminiscing about the past, nor was there any sign of blood rushing to his head or heart racing. Jeeb only felt that his scalp was numb and an uncontrollable chill was spreading all over his body. At that time, he was just a mortal. When he faced a wisdom state demon beast, he was as fragile as a porcelain doll. However, he knew that demon beasts were much easier to deal with than human beings. However, at this moment, facing the powerful soldiers of the northern frontier, he could not think of any way to get out of this situation no matter how hard he tried. One after another, the Frost Mirror cavalrymen were shot to death by the northern region soldiers or dragged out of the ruins where they were hiding and killed. Strangely enough, the northern region soldiers didn't make a single sound during the entire process except for the sound of their breathing, footsteps, and the sound of their triggers being pulled. On the other hand, it was his fellow Frost Mirror cavalrymen who seemed to be on the verge of death and roared in rage as if their minds were on the verge of collapse. Jeeb clung to the wall of the ruins and hid himself in the shadows. He swallowed his saliva and looked at the horses not far away. In the past years, he had never failed to live up to the name, Jeeb. Although he was not as elite as the Shueliao Knights, he was still a famous archer in the tribe. Whether it was against demon beasts or soldiers of other dynasties, Jeeb had never missed his targets so far. However, the armors of the soldiers of the northern frontier, there was no gap at all. It was so thick that it made him desperate. Therefore, he had to run away. He could only run away. He stuck out his tongue and licked his dry lips. Listening to the footsteps that were getting closer and closer, Jeep slowly pulled the bowstring and aimed at the ruins in the distance. He did not dare to pull the bowstring fully. After a short calculation, Jeep loosened his fingers that were pinching the arrow. Whoosh! The sharp arrow stuck close to the ground and flew out with an almost undetectable sound. This was Jeeb's famous skill. When he was hunting on the Frost Mirror grassland, he often used this kind of arrow to break the limbs of the prey or directly hit the soft abdomen of the prey. However, at that time, he had never thought that he would one day shoot this kind of arrow at his own people. A moment later, a scream was heard. The footsteps of Jeeb, who had been quietly approaching, suddenly became hurried. He rushed towards the direction of the scream. Out of the corner of his eye, Jeeb saw that the black-armored northern soldier was getting farther and farther away. Joy flashed through his eyes, but he didn't immediately rush out of the ruins where he was hiding. Instead, he waited for a moment to make sure that there were no other footsteps nearby. Then, he rolled out of the shadows and jumped out. After getting up, he didn't waste any time to turn around and run straight towards the area where the warhorses were. After all, the arrows of the soldiers of the northern frontier were really terrifying. It could be called a one-man army. A soldier of the northern frontier was holding a divine crossbow. With a light pull of the trigger, hundreds of thousands of arrows were shot out. Facing the rain of arrows from the secret territory, any dodging was meaningless. It was better to take advantage of the time when the soldiers of the northern frontier did not react and directly get on the horses and leave. The plan went smoothly. Until Jeeb turned around, not many soldiers of the northern frontier were aware of his actions. Jeeb did not intend to leave after saying a few harsh words. He directly turned around and ran in the direction of the frost mirror grassland. After running for nearly an hour, he finally got rid of all the soldiers behind him. Jeeb took a deep breath. His face, which was blackened by the wind on the grassland, showed a smile of surviving a disaster. However, before he could laugh out loud, soldiers in black armor appeared in his sight again. Jeeb could recognize that these soldiers in black armor were not from the same army as the soldiers in black armor. This was because the two words, Black Water, were engraved on their gauntlets. However, in the entire Tianwu continent, who did not know that other than Shenlin Jun, the Blackwater Army was the only powerful army that could form a battle formation and collide with the Shueliao cavalry? But the question was, why would the Blackwater Army appear here? And why did the Blackwater Army seem to be coming from the direction of the Frost Mirror grassland? Jeeb opened his mouth but did not have the chance to speak. He saw a Blackwater Army soldier lift a black tubular object towards him. Bang! A sound that startled countless birds spread out. Jeeb's head flew in all directions like a shattered watermelon. The Blackwater Army soldier who shot Jeeb did not show any emotion on his face. He just said indifferently, "There really are people who slipped out. Let's spread out and continue to search the surrounding area." Lord Dragon King said that this time, we must directly cut off the claws of the Shuangjin dynasty. We must not let a single barbarian go. Yes, sir. The Blackwater Army nearby all agreed. They carried the black muskets in their hands and scattered in all directions. These scattered Blackwater Army soldiers vaguely formed a large net, trapping the dragon riders of the northern frontier and the soldiers of the pass who slipped through the net. Chapter 1080. The Shuangjin dynasty could be said to have suffered a crushing defeat. It had come quickly, but it had also fallen quickly. Even Lin Yuan hadn't imagined that the Frost Mirror barbarian soldiers would be so weak in front of gunpowder. However, when he thought about it, it wasn't that surprising. After all, in his previous life, the fall of the Qing dynasty was something everyone knew. There was also the Ming dynasty's Divine Machine Army. They had also used gunpowder to force the grassland cavalry to flee. Although these grassland cavalries of the Tianwu world were all cultivators, the gunpowder developed by Lin Yuan's Ministry of Works was not the original formula. Even cultivators would be as weak as a joke in the face of firearms of this scale, especially when they had a certain amount of gunpowder in their hands. Although the primitive creatures and the prime of Tongtian didn't dare to think about it, killing a few native false gods of the Tianwu world was not a problem at all. Turning his gaze slightly, Lin Yuan's gaze fell on another place. The third prince led the 27 Blood Liao cavalry south along the Wei River, not daring to enter the northern frontier. At the same time, he was worried that he would be targeted by the Sky Demon. So even though the group was small, they didn't dare to increase their speed. Soon. Once we cross that hill, we'll reach a ferry. I've already had people prepare supplies and clothes there. Once we get there, we can rest for a while. While no one is watching us, we can cross the river and enter the Azure River dynasty. The third prince's voice slowly rang out. It was unknown whether he was comforting himself or trying to boost morale. Hearing that they were about to reach their destination, the surrounding Blood Liao cavalry's expressions clearly improved. However, when they crossed the hill and reached the ferry, they didn't see any supplies. They didn't even see anyone waiting for them. Clang! 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 The Shueliao knights drew their scimitars from their waists, and the 27 of them quickly formed a formation, protecting the third prince. They could smell the stench of blood in the air, but they couldn't see where the enemy was. However, they could vaguely tell that there were traces of human life here. At the very least, it had been like this an hour ago. Creak. The door of a building at the ferry was pushed open, and a man covered in blood knocked his hands against the ground, crawling out almost inch by inch. As if noticing the third prince in his group, he turned his head. His eyes were lifeless, but he continued to mumble, "Save, save me, save me." Before he could finish speaking, there seemed to be a huge force that dragged him back into the wooden house. What followed was strange laughter, screams, and chewing sounds, which made one's scalp go numb. A demon beast. One of the Blood Liao cavalry swallowed and tightened his right hand around his scimitar. Although they didn't live along the Wei River, they weren't very far from it. The demon beasts of the Wei River would crawl out at night to attack the various ferries and villages along the river, only returning at daybreak. This wasn't anything new. Logically speaking, the villages and ferries along the river should have worshipped a Lord Dragon King to protect them. This Lord Dragon King might be a powerful aquatic demon beast or a member of a nearby clan of demon beasts. But generally speaking, with the protection of this Lord Dragon King, the demon beasts of the nearby waters wouldn't attack human settlements. Either they had forgotten to worship him, or the Lord Dragon King they worshipped had died and this place had been taken over by other demon beasts. It couldn't be that bad, right? One of the Blood Liao cavalry wondered. Of all the times, something had to happen now. It doesn't seem like it. Another Blood Liao cavalry spoke up, his voice trembling as he pursed his lips. Didn't you see? When that guy crawled out, there were bloody teeth marks on his face. That wasn't the work of a demon beast. No matter what kind of demon beast it was, it would have at least bitten off half of his head. How could there only be a single bite mark? As soon as he spoke, everyone felt their hair stand on end. It wasn't a demon beast, but a human bite mark. What the hell was this? A human was eating a human. One of the more rash Shueliao knights spat to the side and strode out of the wooden house. He raised his scimitar and aimed it at the wooden door that had just closed. He growled, "You there, I don't care who you are. Hurry up and come out. Don't try to scare Grandpa with your tricks." As soon as he spoke, the wooden door was suddenly pulled open. A gust of wind blew in his face, causing this Shueliao knight's expression to change. Unable to care about his embarrassment, he rolled on the ground, avoiding the gust of wind. When he got up again, he couldn't find what had attacked him. He could only turn his head and cast a pleading gaze at the third prince and his fellow soldiers. One of the Blood Liao cavalry's face was deathly pale as he pointed behind him. His lips trembled, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. His expression suddenly changed, and he threw the scimitar in his hand away, grabbing it and slashing it behind him. Poochie! The feeling of the scimitar entering his body made him feel much more at ease. What followed was a flood of doubt. These things didn't seem difficult to deal with. Their first attack was extremely fast, but it wasn't impossible to dodge. After that, he didn't feel threatened at all. As his scimitar fell, the Blood Liao cavalry turned around and kicked the thing he'd slashed. At the same time, he kicked it, sending it flying 4 or 5 meters. Only now did he clearly see what had attacked him. He was wearing coarse linen clothes commonly seen on mortals. He seemed to be humanoid, but his face was ashen. One could vaguely see dark purple livor mortis spots all over his body. The most eye-catching thing was his throat, which was as thin as a needle. He seemed to be chewing something in his mouth, but no one knew how much food he had to chew before he could swallow it down with such a thin throat. This guy was a classic monster. There was also a large amount of blood around its mouth. It was obvious that it was the one who'd attacked the humans in the wooden house. Humans' fear often came from the unknown. The Blood Liao cavalry had never seen such a monster before, and a trace of fear suddenly appeared in their hearts. This was especially true for the monster that had been slashed and kicked by the Blood Liao cavalry. It actually staggered up from the ground, as if it hadn't been injured at all. The sinister scimitar had almost torn half of its chest open, revealing the sternum and organs underneath. Chapter 1081. Lin Yuan, who was secretly observing, twitched his eyelids slightly. When his gaze fell on the monster, there was obvious doubt in his eyes. It was common knowledge that the majority of undead creatures were extremely ugly. They were rotten, damaged, or even sinister. Their bodies emitted a foul stench that was enough to make anyone who saw them feel repulsed. Even the vampires that had been glorified in countless movies and novels in his previous world were nothing more than monsters with colorless skin, deformed heads like bats, and enormous wings on their backs. The word appearance had nothing to do with undead creatures. But the undead creatures Lin Yuan had seen in the heaven martial world were rather strange. Whether it was the underworld river creatures or the undying transformed by the immortality medicine, the majority of them had retained their appearance from when they were alive. Even if they mutated, they wouldn't be too deformed. Moreover, when injured, they would display terrifying self-healing abilities. But this hungry ghost, a shriveled and emaciated body was already not bad, but it had a belly as large as a pregnant woman's and a throat as thin as a needle. It was the perfect example of a deformed monster. What concerned Lin Yuan the most was that, so far, the wound on the hungry ghost's chest had not shown any signs of healing. On the other side, Knight Shueliao, who had been the first to clash with the hungry ghost, felt his heart tremble. He growled, "This fellow only looks strange. You all saw it before, I easily injured it with a single slash of my blade. Everyone, come and help. I don't believe that this fellow will be able to stand up as if nothing happened after being cut to pieces." However, as soon as he finished speaking, a voice rang out. The wooden doors of the buildings around the ferry were pushed open, and one hungry ghost after another walked out. The third prince, whose expression had been as calm as still water, turned his gaze and saw that the person who had been dragged into the building had also been turned into a hungry ghost. He wobbled as he joined the ranks surrounding the rash Shueliao knight. Only now did the third prince realize the severity of the problem. Clenching his teeth, he said, "These things should be similar to the undying that's causing so much trouble on the northern frontier. Everyone, be careful. Don't let them injure you. These things are infectious. For now, we don't know if they'll infect you when you're injured or if they'll only turn you into a monster after you die. There's no harm in being careful." Formation. Not many people lived at the ferry, but there were quite a few people coming and going. Coupled with the permanent residents, this ferry had a population of around 50,000. So far, they hadn't seen a single living person. Even if they made the best preparations, they would still have to deal with 30 to 40,000 monsters. 28 people, surrounded by more than 40,000 monsters, were like a small boat in a storm, with the possibility of capsizing at any time. Boom! Another loud noise was heard. The third prince subconsciously turned his head, but his eyes instantly narrowed. His pupils had even shrunk to the size of needles. The commotion behind them wasn't small, and the third prince wasn't the only one who turned around. Very quickly, a figure dressed in black and red heavy armor, holding a crescent moon halberd, appeared in everyone's line of sight. Under that broken helmet, the face was similarly deathly gray, and was covered with dark purple livor mortis. However, no one present would be unfamiliar with this face. The 13th prince of the Shuangjin dynasty. Although the third prince didn't know what his 13th brother had experienced on the northern frontier, now it seemed that the 13th prince had appeared here not to escort them to the territory of the Azure River Empire. On the contrary, a monster that had been transformed into an undying had appeared at their predetermined retreat point. He had even killed everyone at the ferry in advance and turned them into this kind of monster. Moreover, he had patiently waited here to ambush them. The Imperial Secret Service, ye boss ho. The third prince murmured, lost in thought for a moment. He had always envied the intelligence agencies of the northern frontier. He had even imitated the northern frontier and established his own Blood Eagle organization. But because of Frostmirror's appearance and personality, although these Blood Eagles were elite roaming cavalry, there weren't many who could infiltrate other forces and provide him with all kinds of intelligence. But on the other hand, it was naturally not so easy for outsiders to infiltrate the Shuangjin dynasty. The third prince had originally thought that he had overestimated the intelligence agencies of the northern frontier. This time, he hadn't even brought his trusted aides and Blood Eagle members with him. He had only chosen 27 Blood Eagle knights with extraordinary aptitude and clean backgrounds to prepare and accompany him. He had almost planned to build his own force from scratch. But even so, the northern frontier had already grasped his whereabouts. That could only mean one thing. Among the 27 Blood Eagle knights at his side, there were members of the Imperial Secret Service or Yi Bus Ho. As his thoughts raced, the third prince suddenly turned his head and his gaze landed on the reckless Shueliao knight. His face turned cold, but before he could open his mouth to speak, he saw the other party reveal a sinister smile. With a shake of his right hand, the Shueliao knight crushed a tube of medicine that was like clear water. A choking smell immediately spread out. The hungry ghosts that were continuously closing in on him furrowed their brows in disgust. They all chose to circle around him and did not continue to attack the Shueliao knight. At this moment, the Blood Eagle knight thumped his chest and grinned viciously. Subordinate of the MI7, thumb-level spy, Shin Qi, greets you. After his self-introduction, Shin Qi bowed slightly, facing the third prince, and slowly retreated into the ranks of the hungry ghosts. Soon after, he disappeared without a trace. Me-7. The third prince's expression darkened. He had some understanding of the intelligence agencies of the northern frontier, but his primary focus was still on the Imperial Secret Service and Yi Bus Ho. But this didn't mean that he hadn't heard of the MI7. In fact, the leader of the MI7, Zhang Shuzhu, was someone who was extremely hostile to the Shuangjin dynasty. It was just that the MI7 was only responsible for monitoring the military on the northern frontier and commanding the strategic analysis department, so it wasn't very well known to outsiders. Thus, the third prince had never imagined that there would be a spy by the MI7 at his side. This was why he had fallen into this desperate situation. Third brother. What the third prince hadn't expected was that the 13th prince, who had almost single-handedly cut off their path of retreat, didn't display the low intelligence of an undying. Instead, he opened his mouth and said in a hoarse voice, "Long time no see." Chapter 1082. The third prince was silent for a moment before he said, 13th prince, you are Father Khan's favorite son. This time, Father Khan attacked the northern frontier. He claimed that he wanted to plunder the wealth of the northern frontier to make up for the damage done to the Shuangjin dynasty during the war. But anyone with a discerning eye knows that Father Khan is unwilling to give up. He still likes you. Even when he is old, he still refuses to abdicate because he thinks that I am not worthy to be the next Frost Khan. Before he can confirm that you are really dead, that's not important. The 13th prince grinned, revealing 2 rows of sharp white teeth. He laughed viciously and said, what does the Shuangjin dynasty have to do with me? I am already a dead man. You chose all of this, third brother. At this point, he paused and raised the crescent halberd in his hand. He pointed it at the third prince's ashen face and growled, I was not captured alive, but Lord Dragon King gave me another life and a higher level of power. Third brother, do you know that your men have been following me all this time? They wanted to escape when they saw that the situation was not right. But in the northern frontier, nothing can escape the eyes of the Dragon King, and no one can escape the pursuit of the Imperial secret guards. So, your men ran for 2 days and 1 night, but they were still caught by the Imperial secret guards. When they were interrogated, I had already woken up and was listening to the interrogation. The third prince's expression changed drastically. His originally ashen face was now so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. To outsiders, the embroidered uniform guard was just a secret organization established in the north. But to someone like the third prince who had seriously studied the structure of the embroidered uniform guard and how they did things, these 3 words represented an existence that was like a scourge or a ferocious beast. If Lin Yuan was willing to give up power, the Imperial secret guards would be a sharp knife. Monitoring the officials of the northern frontier was a basic operation. Even the words of the civil and military officials of the northern frontier would be put on the desk of the Imperial secret guards the next morning. With this kind of ability, coupled with the special privileges of the Imperial secret guards, Lin Yuan and Li Zhong, as well as the Imperial edict set up when the Imperial secret guards were first established, it could be said that as long as the Imperial secret guards were willing to investigate, there was not much that could be left in the dark. As for the interrogation, the third prince had also understood the interrogation methods of the Imperial secret guards, and he deeply agreed with them. There was no one in the world who was truly free of fear. Or rather, things like death and being implicated were not things that the other party was afraid of. Even if they were afraid, they would not show it on their faces, because only people with value had the right to live. So, when faced with things like interrogation, refusing to cooperate was the norm. But the Imperial secret guards were not a qualified judicial organization. The meaning of their existence was to do the dirty work for the northern frontier. So, the Imperial secret guards only had one method of interrogation: torture. If a person felt that they had a chance to live, no matter how you tortured them, they would not reveal a single secret. But on the other hand, if you did not interrogate them to find out the secrets they knew, and only continued to torture them, from the physical to the mental, once the other party's spirit had completely dissipated, there would be no need for you to interrogate them. They would naturally spill out all the secrets they knew, like beans spilling out beans. They would no longer ask for unrealistic thoughts like living or obtaining freedom. After all, entering the imperial prison of the Imperial secret guards and not the prison of the Northern Frontier Ministry of Justice, the chances of survival were currently 0. So, after revealing the secrets buried in the bottom of their hearts, they could only hope for a quick death for the sake of losing their value. The third prince was still self-aware of the standards of the people around him. So, it was obvious that the 13th prince already knew that the third prince had gone to the northern frontier because of his instigation. Even if he did not encounter the northern frontier army, he would still die in an assassination attempt. Therefore, from the moment the two brothers met, there was no longer any possibility of them shaking hands and making peace. The 13th prince appeared here today for the sole purpose of killing his third brother. The third prince squinted his eyes and slowly clenched his fists. He said in a deep voice, "13th prince, I don't know what you've heard, but you have to know that we are all part of the Shuangjin dynasty. Now that the Shuangjin dynasty is facing a disaster, as I said, that's not important." The 13th prince shook his neck and said expressionlessly, "Besides, if you really have a sense of responsibility for the Shuangjin dynasty, you wouldn't have left the Frost Mirror grassland with these few people and planned to rebuild your own power. I know what you want to say next. It's nothing more than a feud between us brothers. Just shut the door and make a fuss. Don't implicate others. Let these people go, is that right?" The third prince's expression froze. This was his 13th brother. Had he become enlightened after dying once? "My good third brother, you don't think that the people around you have been telling you every day that you are as thoughtful as water, as cunning as a fox, and that you are an unparalleled sage on the prairie? You have heard so many of them that even you believe them yourself, right? Ha ha ha. Father and I have never paid any attention to your petty cleverness. Do you really think that we know nothing about what you've done? The 13th prince shook his head gently and mocked, "How stupid must you be to believe such flattery? If you ask me, those people just don't know that my good third brother is a very powerful cultivator. They can't find a horse to flatter, so they can only say that your intelligence is unparalleled in the world. But in reality, let alone Lord Dragon King, anyone from the northern frontier can beat you to a pulp. Do you still not understand that your little cleverness can't be hidden from others?" The third prince's chest heaved violently. In his heart, his 13th brother had always been the model of a boorish man. Anyone who claimed to be wise would not like to be mocked as stupid by a boorish man. "Do you really think that I went to the northern frontier because your scheme succeeded?" the 13th prince said with a hideous smile. "Didn't you realize that all the assassins you arranged were by my side? Do you think this is a coincidence? I originally wanted to use this opportunity to purge all the spies you buried around me, and at the same time, turn the tables on you. It's just that your luck is pretty good. We just happened to run into the Blackwater army, so your little cleverness succeeded. But you can't imagine how much benefit I gained from dying at the northern frontier." Chapter 1083. The Shueliao Knights didn't know what kind of power the 13th prince had obtained on the northern frontier, but they were all elites of the younger generation of the Shuangjin dynasty. They knew what the 13th prince was capable of when he was alive. When the other youths of the Shuangjin dynasty were still working hard to cultivate, the 13th prince had already joined the Shueliao Knights. Even the most outstanding of the younger generation had only just joined the Bloodrush Knights. By the time they became reserve members, the 13th prince had already become one of the commanders of the Bloodrush Knights and had the qualifications to lead the Bloodrush Knights alone. It wasn't because he had the royal bloodline that he was given special treatment. It was because the 13th prince's strength had truly reached that level. The tribes of the Shuangjin dynasty supported the 13th prince to become the new Shuangjin Khan not because of the old Khan's favoritism, nor because they felt that the 13th prince was a puppet that they could manipulate and fool. Their support for the 13th prince came from the feelings and prestige that they had gained through killing on the battlefield. 28 against 1, they might not even be able to defeat the 13th prince. But now, 27 against 40,000, cold sweat appeared on the foreheads of the Shueliao Knights. This was a battle that they couldn't win. Not to mention that in the dark, who knew how many spies from MI7 were conserving their strength? The third prince's eyes darkened slightly. He gritted his teeth and said, "I'll stay here and stall the 13th prince. You guys think of a way to break out. It's up to fate." "Ha!" The 13th prince tilted his head and a cold light flashed in his gray eyes. He said in confusion, "How strange. Where did my third brother, who treats everyone as fools and chess pieces, go? He gave up his life to fight for a chance for his subordinates to break out. This kind of decision wouldn't." Clang! Before he could finish his sentence, the 13th prince's expression changed. He swung his crescent halberd in a half-circle and destroyed a fist that appeared in front of him. The third prince's figure appeared in the air. He took a deep breath, and his skin almost turned purple as he punched out again. The 13th prince raised his halberd and met the third prince's fist head-on. The crescent halberd, which had made a name for itself on the Frost Mirror grassland and had killed countless powerful warriors from other dynasties, suddenly broke apart. The first punch is the foundation. 100% of the power, 1 million gene of force. The second punch is the beginning. 2 times the power, 2 million gene of force. The 13th prince narrowed his eyes and smacked his lips. He grinned viciously. "See, Khan doesn't only favor me. No matter how many times I begged him, he wouldn't teach me the tidal arts technique. But he taught me you, he didn't hold." The third prince did not speak. His eyes narrowed slightly as he hid his hands behind his back. His palms were trembling. He was one of those people with a special constitution. Although he looked gentle and weak, he could erupt with terrifying strength. Coupled with the tidal arts boost, His first punch was at full strength, the second punch was 2 times the power, and the third punch was 4 times the power. This meant that even though he was only at the Heaven Star realm, the third prince's punches were enough to kill a Void realm expert. Even a Tao initiation realm expert would have to avoid them. Even more frightening was the fact that not even the creator of the title art knew what the upper limit was. This was because under the guidance of this technique, the stellar energy in one's body would be like a tide, layer upon layer, and each strike would be far more powerful than the last. It could be said that as long as one cultivated this technique, one would be able to kill someone of the same level within 3 punches. After 10 punches, one would be able to fight across realms. But in the end, there were still rules in this world. Thus, a heaven-defying technique like the title art was not something that could be used at any time. Once it was activated, one could not easily withdraw their strength. Even if it was just one strike, forcefully interrupting the title art's circulation would require one to endure an extremely terrifying backlash. This meant that unless one killed all their opponents, it was impossible to interrupt this technique. Otherwise, the backlash alone would be enough to make one suffer. And if one was surrounded by powerful enemies, one would be doomed. Thus, cultivators who cultivated the title art would usually go to one of 2 extremes. One was to suppress all their enemies in an extremely short battle. The other, in an infinitely long battle, the title art could not be interrupted, and one would end up as a withered corpse. At this moment, the third prince already felt a dull pain in his hands. His special constitution was extremely compatible with the title art. Unlike ordinary cultivators, he did not need to accumulate strength for each strike. When he attacked, he would explode with the strongest physical strength he could muster at his current level. Even monster beasts that specialized in physical strength would not be able to survive in front of this immense strength. And every subsequent strike would be boosted by a terrifying number. But it was precisely for this reason that the third prince could only attack with 3 punches at a time. If he exceeded 3 punches, crippling both his hands would be the lightest punishment. The maximum boost of the title art was something that he might not even see in his entire life. Third brother, there's still one last punch, right? What are you waiting for? The 13th prince tossed the halberd in his hand to the side. A sinister smile still hung on his ashen face as he said in a deep voice, "Attack me. Let's see if you can kill me with 1,000,000 kilograms of force." The moment he finished speaking, the third prince's expression had already turned extremely ugly. Because he suddenly realized that his 13th brother's words earlier might not have been purely mocking him, nor was it because he had received instructions from the northern frontier to attack his confidence. Just as he had said, the third prince's cleverness was due to his arrogance. Many of his trusted aides were probably spies planted by the 13th prince, his father, and even his other brothers and sisters. His arrogance and his cleverness, had he always been a caged bird? Since you know my strength, then you should also know that you will definitely not be able to take on this level. The third prince's eyes narrowed slightly as he tried to control the change in his expression. The 13th prince held the halberd in one hand and smiled. That's why I said to let you attack me. If I don't let you see it with your own eyes, how will you understand what kind of strength I have gained thanks to you? Boom! The sonic boom almost completely replaced the 13th prince's voice. 4,000,000 gene of pure physical strength, coupled with the title art's maximum power, the third prince's third punch, which he regarded as his trump card, smashed out fiercely. Chapter 1084. Lin Yuan could see that under the third prince's punch, the space was crumbling and the heaven and earth were shaking. It had almost reached the limit that the heaven and earth could bear. After all, it was not a complete world. It could not even be considered a medium-class world. This level of power could not even cause a ripple in the untainted world. However, even though this punch looked terrifying, it was actually nothing much. Compared to a false god expert's full strength, which could even silently shatter a corner of the world, this kind of mighty power could only affect the world for a moment. After the punch, everything would return to normal. Even so, Lin Yuan's eyes did not have the slightest ripple. Just like the 13th prince, he had a ferocious smile on his face from the beginning to the end. If the ugly face full of livor mortis was removed, such a smile might not be ferocious. It could only be described as the indifference and confidence that everything was under his control. There was no suspense in this battle. The hungry ghost realm, one of the 6 realms, was not that simple. The 6 realms was what the Buddhism sect called it. However, that was only the operation of the Buddhism sect in Hongjun. Just like how the Ashura tribe created by ancestor Mingi also became a living creature of the Buddhism sect. In many of the Buddhism sect scriptures, they tried to translate the hungry ghost realm into the ghost realm. However, the closer it was to the era of myths, the more it was called the hungry ghost realm. Because at that time, myths had not yet declined, and the netherworld was not in existence that the so-called Holy Mountain of the West could contend with. They could only plan and plan, but could not arbitrarily change it. In the Buddhism sect scriptures, it was recorded in Volume 8 of the Mahayana chapter. The so-called hungry ghost was often hungry and weak, so it was called hungry ghost. The hungry ghost mentioned by the Buddhism sect was formed by people who had bad karma, such as refusing to help others, stealing, and not helping others when they were in trouble. After death, they would fall into hell and become a hungry ghost that suffered from hunger all day long. But in fact, the hungry ghost realm was an independent world. It belonged to one of the 6 realms. Like Ashura, it was a living creature that was born in the netherworld. Hungry ghosts were not seen in the later generations, so they were often described by the Buddhism sect. They were divided into 3 categories: external handicapped ghosts, hungry ghosts, and eating handicapped ghosts. But a real hungry ghost wasn't a fallen spirit that was tormented. True hungry ghosts were creatures of the netherworld. Compared to the hungry ghosts in the Buddhist scriptures that could be seen with the naked eye, true hungry ghosts were also spirits that could not be seen. However, they were born with the ability to devour everything. In other words, hungry ghosts could devour anything they wanted to devour, whether it was tangible or intangible. In this state, hungry ghosts would have the ability to devour anything they wanted to devour. This also meant that no matter how much power the 3rd prince used, he would not be able to kill the 13th prince who had transformed into a hungry ghost. This was because in this situation where the first 2 punches were blocked, no matter how terrifying the 3rd punch was, as long as it was not a power of the same level as the Joss flame that could mobilize the rules, it would be eliminated by the hungry ghost's devouring ability and be converted into the power that the hungry ghost temporarily possessed. Of course, this was just an ordinary hungry ghost. If it was a hungry ghost path master like the 13th prince, although Empress Pingxin, who had been tricked by Hongjun and caused the Wu tribe to collapse, was trapped in the netherworld, she had done many things. For example, Bai Qi, Qiyu, and the others were all transformed from Wu tribe members. Qiyu, in particular, was one of the few Wu tribe members who had a primordial spirit. Compared to other Wu tribe members who only relied on their physical bodies, the upper limit of their growth was much higher. It was only because the system that Lin Yuan carried with him was the original fragment of the primitive heavenly way that he knew that the path master of the 6 paths, as one of the 9 saints of the primitive world, was not easy to deal with. This was especially so for the evil ghost, who was born like a bug. Empress Pingxin had high hopes for him. Therefore, the path master of the hungry ghost path usually had a hidden ability called Devour the Heavens. The more the path master of the hungry ghost path used Devour, the more powerful he would become. Furthermore, there was a certain probability that the power he devoured would be permanently fixed in his body. If the 13th prince was able to devour the 3rd prince's 3rd punch, it meant that he had a high chance of obtaining the 3rd prince's special physique and the title Ruins and technique. In addition, the hungry ghost itself was like a bug. It was even possible for him to see the maximum amplification of the tidal ruins and technique. After all, the power of the hungry ghost was truly endless. The more enemies it faced, the stronger it would be. As long as it was not an almighty who could casually use the power of incense, it would become stronger and stronger. In battle, with the assistance of the devour ability, it was almost like a perpetual motion machine that could last forever. Hungry ghost path, devour. As the fist approached him, the smile on the 13th prince's face grew wider and wider. Finally, at the moment when the fist was about to touch his face, he slowly activated his devour ability. Suddenly, a large amount of black fog erupted from the 13th prince's body. Like numerous spirit snakes, it coiled around the invisible fist force in the air and nibbled away the power of the third prince's attack bit by bit. A puzzled expression gradually appeared on the third prince's face. He did not have a vision similar to Lin Yuan's eye of God. Naturally, he could not see the hungry ghost's power devouring his fist force. However, he could clearly sense that his power was rapidly weakening. Furthermore, the closer he got to the 13th prince, the weaker his power became. The fist landed on the 13th prince's face. However, the scene of flesh and blood flying everywhere was not what the third prince had imagined. It was more like a weak and powerless ordinary person throwing out a punch with all his might. However, it did not even move a hair on his opponent's head. This is, the third prince was momentarily at a loss. The pain from his hands prevented him from falling into confusion. Everything was clearly real. Then, why did his power suddenly disappear? Third brother, you're really strong. The 13th prince still had a smile on his face. He maintained his original posture and did not move at all. However, he could sense that his body was filled with an incomparably tyrannical power. It was like a wild horse that had escaped its reins. No matter what, it could not be restrained. It only wanted to vent and destroy everything in front of it. However, he paused for a moment. Then, he changed the topic and said with a smile, "If you had thrown out such a punch in the past, I'm afraid I wouldn't even have a complete corpse." How laughable. In order to maintain the image of a so-called wise man, you can even abandon such a powerful power. Someone like you still wants to inherit the position of Khan Shuang Gentian. Chapter 1085. Victory and defeat have been decided. Zhang Shizhu, who was hiding in the dark, had a sharp glint in his eyes. He gestured with his hands, and the MI7 agents who were lying in ambush immediately began to move. Their real purpose of lying in ambush here was not to kill the third prince. Or rather, that was not their current purpose. The hungry ghosts were creatures of the hungry ghost path, but there was no hungry ghost path in the Tianwu world. Therefore, the birth of a hungry ghost like the 13th prince was already a coincidence. He even had to thank the Nether River Patriarch, who had introduced the Nether Blood Sea to the Tianwu world. He had sent capable generals like the hungry ghost path and the Azura path to Lin Yuan. However, the corpses that the 13th prince had turned into hungry ghosts were not hungry ghosts. In a sense, they were indeed the type of hungry ghosts described in the scriptures of Buddhism. In comparison, the variants in the Tianwu world were obviously much more terrifying. Because they were contagious. Just like zombies, once these hungry ghosts hurt their enemies by biting them, they would quickly turn their enemies into hungry ghosts. Although there were more and more undyings in the northern frontier, it was only because too many people had died to the undyings. In addition, the matter of the elixir of immortality had not been dealt with properly. The outer god of the heavenly passage realm had led the undyings to work together with Su Yan, Lei Fan, and the others. Only then had the power of the Nether Blood Sea erupted and almost turned the entire northern frontier into the underworld. Except for the undyings that had been transformed by the elixir of immortality, the vast majority of the undyings had been transformed into existences that wandered the northern frontier. This was unavoidable. However, the undyings in the northern frontier did not have the ability to infect others. If these hungry ghosts were left unchecked, not to mention whether the northern frontier would be affected, the nearby Frost Mirror, Xinjiang, Yunnan, Deadwood, Southern Wasteland, and even the Hingduan mountain range would be greatly affected. They might even turn into ghost regions. At that time, the world would be filled with hungry ghosts. Regardless of whether the karma mentioned by Buddhism or the fate mentioned by Taoism actually exists or not, there must be something worthy of reverence for Taoist Red Cloud and others to be so fearful. Therefore, Lin Yuan really didn't want to bear this sin. After all, the main forces of the Northern Frontier Army were still in the Hingduan mountain range and had yet to be fully withdrawn. The additional Blackwater Army and the Northern Frontier Dragon Riders were still at the Northern Frontier Great Wall hunting down the Shuangjin dynasty's army. The Association of the Shifter Emperor was in charge of searching for the Northern Restoration Society. The Imperial Brocade Guards were in charge of maintaining the stability of the Northern Frontier. Night Biao was mostly scattered across the Frost Mirror Plains. Apart from the MI7, there was no one else to mobilize. They could not ignore the Wandering Sky Demon and ask the Fallen Star Army and the Northern Battlefront Army to come here, could they? Zhang Xiuzhu put a silver mask on his face and shook his dark green windbreaker. He said in a deep voice, "I think you all know what we are going to face next. So, let me make it clear. These hungry ghosts must be wiped out here. If you are accidentally hurt, I can only say that don't take any chances. Just kill yourselves. After you die, you will be conferred a posthumous official title, which will bring good fortune to your descendants and relatives. If you bring the trouble out of here, even exterminating 10 families is a light punishment." Understood. The group of MI7 agents agreed one after another. No matter how serious the internal strife within the northern region was, there was one thing that was certain, and that was that business was done according to the rules. Even if the two sides were sworn enemies, there would never be the slightest bit of selfishness or deliberate behavior when doing business. Therefore, after Zhang Xiuzhu said that the northern region was incurable, it meant that the poison of these hungry ghosts was really incurable. Move! Zhang Xiuzhu gave the order. His figure flashed, and he had already appeared outside the port. He pulled out a thin horizontal saber from his waist. Wherever the blade passed, the heads of the hungry ghosts were immediately cut off, and then they struggled and fell to the ground. More and more hungry ghosts rushed toward Zhang Xiuzhu. However, the agents of the MI7 quickly filled the gap left by Zhang Xiuzhu's saber. They started to kill the hungry ghosts one by one like a meat grinder. On the other side, the third prince tried to gather his strength again. However, the strange thing was that even if he wanted to pay the price of being disabled or killed, he could not activate the tidal ruin skill. It was as if the cultivation he had accumulated for many years had disappeared along with the strange feeling of his strength flowing away. "Third brother, we are brothers. Do you have any last words? I will try my best to satisfy you." The 13th prince looked at the depressed third prince, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He said in an extremely serious tone. "Last words, huh?" The third prince revealed a sorrowful expression as he said in a low voice, "What else can I think now that things have come to this? Arislan, I only hope that you can use your strength to protect the Frost Empire on account of the fact that you are of the royal bloodline of the Frost Empire, and on account of the fact that Father Khan dotes on you so much, to protect the Frost Empire. At the very least, protect the Shuel Yao tribe." The 13th prince did not continue the conversation after he finished speaking. After a long while, he sighed faintly and said in a low voice, "If only you were really my third brother." Unfortunately, these words will never come out of my third brother's mouth. "You are second brother, right?" The second brother who was declared to have died prematurely when he was born. The third prince remained silent. The 13th prince continued, "My father once told me that he had hundreds of sons, but the most promising ones weren't me or my third brother. Instead, it was the second son who was declared to have died the moment he was born. However, due to some special reasons, second brother had no choice but to die, because he would never be able to inherit the Mirrorfrost court. But I never knew why. Can you tell me, second brother? The third prince slowly raised his head. His face gradually changed into a fair-skinned young man with delicate facial features. A moment later, his 2 locks of hair were slowly tied up, turning into a pair of gray and white wolf ears. A fluffy gray tail also poked out of his clothes. Do you understand now? The second prince, who revealed his true appearance first, looked at the 13th prince expressionlessly and said, I am my father's son, and I am also the vessel chosen by the wolf god. My parents were both humans, but I was born with the appearance of a demi-human. My father checked the ancient records. There were not many people like me in history, but they were not rare either. From the age of 15 to 55, I would gradually lose myself and become the legendary wolf god. Therefore, when I was born, I could only be a dead person. Chapter 1086. The Wolf God of the Frost Mirror Grassland. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. Even the system could not find any information about this grassland wolf god. However, many years ago, the Frost Mirror Grassland was indeed ruled by a powerful wolf-type monster clan. However, the war between humans and monsters had lasted for too long, resulting in a gap in culture and history. What happened to this wolf-type monster clan that had disappeared long before the war between humans and monsters? Where did they go in the end? It was still an unsolved mystery. According to the bloodline, Raymond should also be of the bloodline of the demonic wolf clan. However, at that time, almost all the demonic beast clans had a common ancestor, just like the current Hingduan Mountains. The current mountain-shaking apes could still be related to Subaru if they traced their bloodline, but after a few thousand years, or even tens of thousands of years, if something happened in the middle, the mountain-shaking apes would become a separate demonic ape clan, and would no longer have anything to do with the Sacred Heart apes. If that wolf-type monster clan did not disappear and instead hid in the Frost Mirror Grassland, it would be impossible for them not to leave any traces behind. Unless, Grotto Heaven. Lin Yuan's eyes showed a dignified look. After all, although humans had not yet risen at that time, monster clans were everywhere. Powerful monsters were everywhere and the Hingduan mountain range could not compare to them. Therefore, a powerful clan that could occupy the Frost Mirror Grassland and rule over humans and monsters at that time was definitely in existence that stood at the top of the world. Such a clan could not have disappeared without a trace. Even if there was a gap in the era, there would be clues from all kinds of unofficial history and biographies. It would not be as simple as just a legend in the Frost Mirror Grassland. The only logical explanation was that the demonic wolf clan had participated in some major event, or perhaps they had predicted the rise of the human race in the future. Thus, they had created a paradise world for them to live in and hid it in the depths of the Heaven Martial world. Just like the dragon palace built in the underwater secret realm in the northern frontier. Although Lin Yuan did not find any corpses in it, he obtained some inherited memories. Therefore, he was sure that the underwater secret realm was built to take refuge. A centipede dies but never falls down. These words suddenly flashed through Lin Yuan's mind. An incomparably powerful Yao clan would not disappear without a sound. Furthermore, judging from the evil nature of the Frost Mirror Grassland and the fact that this second prince had appeared out of nowhere, it was likely that the Grassland Wolf tribe had been secretly controlling the Frost Mirror dynasty all this while. The so-called carrier of the wolf god, it was just a smokescreen. It was impossible for a human to give birth to a descendant with the bloodline of a demonic beast, unless the child was still in the mother's womb, and its body was already possessed by an external force, and underwent a certain transformation. Only then would it be born with the characteristics of a demonic beast. It was just like Ning Tianqing from the Qingjiang Empire. He was clearly a reincarnated flood dragon. Even if he hadn't undergone any modifications, as his body slowly grew, a flood dragon tattoo would gradually appear on his body. This second prince is not human. It could even be said that he was not the second prince of the Shuangjin dynasty. He was the bloodline of the grassland wolf clan. He had used the power of incense to reincarnate into the appearance of a human, and disguised himself as such. Vaguely, a powerful aura descended from the sky. Lin Yuan looked over and saw a demonic wolf made entirely of blood and qi appear in front of him. The eye of God failed to scan. It had failed 3 times in a row. Although he did not obtain any exact data, from the feedback given by the eye of God, the opponent's cultivation level should be far above his. The blood and qi demonic wolf clawed at Lin Yuan and bared its fangs at him. It even circled around Lin Yuan. After a full 5 breaths, it said, "Black Zhao, our clan has no relationship with you, so I am not going to pretend to be polite with you. So I will be direct. The Frost Mirror Grassland is our clan's territory. If you don't want to die, stop here." "What if I don't?" Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed coldly. He stared at the blood and qi demonic wolf in front of him and sneered, "Between us demonic beasts, since when did we have to pay attention to seniority and first come first serve? If you came here with your real body, this king might show you some respect. But for a thing like you who hides its head and shows its tail, what right do you have to threaten this king?" The blood and qi demonic wolf's murderous aura burst forth. It stared fiercely at Lin Yuan, as if it could pounce and bite him at any time. The difference in cultivation level. Sorry. That was only for ordinary people. Although Lin Yuan's cultivation level was still at the 8th level of the desolate demon realm, as a cheat, he could directly use the power of Joss flames to fight others through the system. This also meant that as long as the opponent was not a monster-level existence that could instantly kill Lin Yuan before he could react, then they would not be facing a desolate demon, but a false god. With more than 400 million Joss flames in hand, those false gods who had been accumulating for thousands of years might not be able to use as much Joss flames as Lin Yuan. After all, they needed Joss flames to prolong their lives, but Lin Yuan did not need them. Therefore, even if he determined that the opponent's cultivation level was far above his, no matter if he was a demonic king or an ancestral demon, he would only be able to touch the peak of this small world. An existence of this level was not qualified to make Lin Yuan obey. "Do you think that you can change this king's mind just by staring at this king?" Lin Yuan's lips curled into a sinister smile as he said coldly, "This king has his eyes on the Frost Mirror Grassland, so he has to keep it in his hands. If you have the ability, then show me your true colors and fight this king. When the time comes, the loser can just leave. If this king loses, not only will the Frost Mirror Grassland be yours, even the northern frontier will be yours. But if you only rely on your mouth, this king advises you to sleep early. Everything can happen in your dreams." It was unknown to Lin Yuan how many powerhouses there were left in the powerful demonic wolf clan, but he could guess by looking at the dragon palace of the 4 seas. The powerful dragon clan of the 4 seas could only support 6 semi-divinity stage powerhouses. Although the rest of the ancestral demons also had the bloodline of the dragon clan, they were still members of other clans. They could only be regarded as demonic beasts with dragon blood, not the dragon clan of the 4 seas. If that was the case, how many false gods could the demonic wolf clan, which had been in seclusion for countless years, possibly have? If they really fought, Lin Yuan would not be afraid at all. After all, as the deity king of the northern frontier god system, he had existences like Batu and Kagura as his subordinates. As long as he was willing, he could share the Joss flames of the entire northern frontier god system. Chapter 1087. The blood-red demonic wolf still bared its fangs at Lin Yuan. But no matter what, Lin Yuan was right about one thing. Demonic beasts never cared about seniority or the rules of first come, first served. Therefore, if Lin Yuan took a fancy to the Frost Mirror Grassland and used force to conquer it, the only thing the demonic wolf clan could do was to get out of seclusion and fight the northern frontier group head-on. The winner would win and the loser would have to leave. Were they afraid of the Northern Frontier group? Maybe, maybe not. Lin Yuan was sure that the demonic wolf clan was not as powerful as the Endless Sea. After all, the entire Frost Mirror grassland might not be as powerful as the dragon tribe of the Four Seas and the Endless Sea, let alone a demonic wolf clan that had been hiding behind the scenes for many years. But the foundation was still there. If the demonic wolf clan really wanted to start a war with the Northern Frontier group, they could indeed give the Northern Frontier a fatal blow at this juncture. But at the same time, Lin Yuan was very sure that the demonic wolf clan would not dare to start a war. Lin Yuan still had not figured out what the Saraira and the demonized black tortoise in the underwater secret realm were fighting against and why they ended up like this. He could only be sure that the demonic wolf clan was either a creature of the untainted land or from the world of his previous life. Because they had seen through Lin Yuan's background, he could leave the underwater secret realm safely. Who built the underwater secret realm? What was it hiding from? This was the missing part of the inherited memory. Lin Yuan did not even know whether the owner of the underwater secret realm had survived the disaster or not. Was he living in the underwater secret realm now, or was he too late to hide in the underwater secret realm to become a part of the Hingduan Mountains formation in the end? Anyway, he did not see any corpses in the underwater dragon palace. Occasionally, he saw a few corpses, but they were all demonic beasts with dragon blood. It remained to be seen whether the owner of the underwater secret realm was hiding from the same thing as the demonic wolf clan. But at the moment, he was sure that the thing they were hiding from was not far away from the Tianwu world. It could come again at any time. Otherwise, the demonic wolf clan would have come out long ago. How could the Shuangjin dynasty have the chance to gallop on the Frost Mirror grassland? Come out and start a war with the Northern Frontier. They were courting death. It was hard to say whether they could defeat Lin Yuan or not, but if they provoked the thing they were hiding from came out, they would be wiped out. The blood chi fiend wolf took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then, he said coldly, "Black Flood Dragon, you seem to be certain that we don't dare to start a war with the North, right?" "No. No." Lin Yuan shook his head and said indifferently, "I'm just stating my opinion. It's very simple. I want the Frost Mirror grassland. If you are willing to give it to me, that's good. If not, you can fight with the Northern Frontier and see who wins." "Aren't you afraid?" The demonic wolf glared at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan interrupted the blood demon wolf. His tone was still indifferent as he said, "There are many things that I am afraid of, but there are many things that I cannot avoid doing just because I am afraid. On the contrary, it is precisely because I am afraid that I have to grasp enough bargaining chips. As long as I have enough strength, then those who make me afraid will be trampled under my feet." As soon as his voice fell, the momentum of the blood demon wolf paused, and it looked at Lin Yuan in a daze, not knowing what to say for a while. Wasn't this a little too overbearing? He was just short of saying that he was afraid that the other forces would join hands to destroy him. In order to make sure that day would not come, he decided to strike first and destroy the other forces first. The demonic wolf was silent for a moment. It seemed to be organizing its words. Then it said, "Black Jiao, you've come this far. So you should know what the Frost Mirror grassland means to our tribe. Moreover, I don't think you can tolerate the legend of the grassland wolf god after you take over the Frost Mirror grassland. Just like the dragon tribe of the Four Seas had their own god system, the grassland wolf god was also a god system. No matter what kind of existence it was, as long as they wanted to reach the realm of immortality, they could not avoid the power of incense. Even in the untainted world, there was always a competition between orthodoxies. Just like the War of the Three Tribes, the War of Witches and Demons, and later on, when humans killed demons and ghosts, they were all fighting for the power of incense. On a macro level, the ancient conflicts between Buddhism and Taoism and the 100 schools of thought were the same. Since the northern frontier god system had been established, they would never tolerate the existence of the grassland wolf god. Therefore, from this perspective, if Lin Yuan was determined to take over the Frost Mirror grassland, the demonic wolf tribe might really start a war with the northern frontier group. Otherwise, once the legend of the grassland wolf god was suppressed and eliminated, they would naturally not be able to obtain the power of incense. Those masters who had exceeded their lifespan and relied on the power of incense to prolong their lives would die one by one. Lin Yuan remained silent. A war between god systems was never a small matter. Was it really necessary to go to that extent? After a while, the demonic wolf broke the silence again. It said, however, it's inconvenient for our tribe to leave our secluded place. We can't fight with the northern frontier directly. Therefore, unless it's absolutely necessary, the masters of our tribe will not leave our territory. However, we will never give up the Frost Mirror grassland, so, at this point, it paused and growled, let's have a bet. If we win, the northern frontier will have to give up the plan to attack the Frost Mirror grassland. What do you think? What if I win? Lin Yuan lifted his eyelids and asked. Humph. The demonic wolf snorted and said while gritting its teeth, we'll disband the grassland wolf god system. Moreover, the masters of our tribe will join the northern frontier and become members of the northern frontier god system. We'll listen to your orders. The stakes could be considered heavy or light at the same time. If the grassland wolf god won, the northern frontier would have to pay a high price. They would only have to give up the Frost Mirror grassland. Under the restrictions of the grassland wolf god, the Shuangjian dynasty, which had already suffered heavy losses, would never provoke the northern frontier again. By then, the northern frontier would have strategic depth no matter whether it was recovering the original territories of the Xinwu dynasty or attacking the southern wilderness and the Chuyuan dynasty. On the other hand, if the northern frontier won, although the grassland wolf god system would be disbanded and would join the northern frontier and listen to Lin Yuan's orders, it was still better than the northern frontier occupying the Frost Mirror grassland and cutting off the source of the grassland wolf god's incense power. The entire grassland wolf god system would be destroyed. If that's the case, I don't have any objections. How do you plan to bet? Lin Yuan asked with interest. Chapter 1088. The blood demon wolf pondered for a moment, then suddenly looked in the direction of the fairy and said in a deep voice, his name is Darya Chi. If translated into the common language, it means to suppress. You have to know that no matter if it's humans or demonic beasts, a name is very important. Especially in the Frost Mirror grassland, there has never been a situation where a name does not live up to its name. With this name, it can be said to be the most outstanding member of the younger generation in our tribe. Therefore, our candidate is him. After pausing for a moment, it turned its head and looked at Lin Yuan, then continued, send someone from your side to duel with Darya Chi. The outcome of this duel will determine the outcome of the duel. How about it? Darya Chi, the meaning of suppression, a profound light flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. The word suppression was not used casually. If a genius with the name suppression really lived up to its name, it meant that in this era, there was no one who could beat Darya Chi in terms of talent. However, Lin Yuan estimated that the range of this was only within the hidden world wolf tribe. No matter if it was the dragon god of the four seas who was envious of him and was lured into depravity by the great old ones, or himself who could be called a cheater, or even Guan Zhaoshan who performed the taboo ceremony and gave her everything to Lin Yuan, they were all geniuses who could suppress an era. However, that was only in an ordinary era. Tianmu world was about to be repaired. The older generation of cultivators and demonic beasts were destined to be weak and fall behind. Therefore, in this era, a large number of geniuses and monsters would appear like a geyser. Just like in the novels in his previous life, the main character's golden era could be said to be an era where monsters were everywhere. In such a situation, even a cheater like Lin Yuan would not dare to say that he could suppress an era. Alright, I'll let the 13th prince fight. After all, we've already met, so I won't change my candidate. Lin Yuan replied with a smile. He wanted to see who would win between this so-called era-suppressing genius and the future hungry ghost path's pathmaster. At the same time, both the 13th Prince and Daria Qi had received orders from Lin Yuan or the Hidden Wolf clan. The 13th Prince's gaze suddenly became profound. He smashed the broken halberd in his hand and grinned, "So, my second brother is really dead. You are just a demonic beast who has taken over my second brother's body." When the broken halberd landed, a grey wolf claw suddenly stretched out from the void. Dariachi's exquisite facial features did not have the slightest change in expression. However, not long after, dark purple liver mortis spots slowly appeared on his face. Transform. No, a mimicry. The 13th Prince took back the broken halberd that had been stopped by the wolf claw. He raised his eyebrows and grinned. How interesting. No wonder you could exist as my third brother's shadow for so many years without being seen through. It turns out that you have such an ability. It seems that your mimicry can not only imitate the appearance of others, but also their abilities, right? When the 13th Prince finished speaking, the liver mortis spots on Dariachi's face suddenly disappeared. It was only at this moment that a blank expression appeared on his face. It was common knowledge that wolves were not only divided into packs and lone wolves. In many packs of wolves, there were creatures called Bei. The so-called Bei referred to the existence that lived together with the pack of wolves. In many legends, the Bei was an existence that was born with a disability due to genetic defects. Most of their limbs were of different lengths, and their two front legs were extremely short. They were completely unable to rely on their own strength to walk. They had to be placed on the back of a healthy wolf to be able to move together. However, although the Bei was a creature with a deformed and disabled body, it had to contribute to the pack if it lived in a pack of wolves. Otherwise, it would be chased out by the Wolf King and become a wandering lone wolf. It was still fine for ordinary wolves. If they became a lone wolf, they would become a lone wolf. They would still be able to survive. However, the Bei was different. Once the disabled Bei left the pack of wolves, even moving would be a problem. Naturally, it would not be able to survive. Therefore, under the premise that the Bei's movements did not change, it would either be abandoned by the pack of wolves and die, or it would quickly adapt to the environment and contribute to the pack of wolves. For example, it would make plans, arrange ambushes, and so on. Usually, a pack of wolves that had the Bei's command would be more cunning than a pack of wolves that did not have the Bei's command. It was just like a group of wandering soldiers and an organized army. There was a huge difference between them. Dariachi was like a Bei in the Hidden Werewolf clan. Because of the deformity in his body, he left the Hidden Wolf clan and secretly possessed the second prince's body. Although Dariachi was extremely talented in cultivation, he was still a disabled Bei. He could not survive without the pack of wolves. Therefore, Dariachi took the initiative to possess the second prince. He gave up his original body and became what he was now. However, mimicry was not some kind of technique or ritual. It was a special ability of the Bei. Although there were some limitations, once it was activated, no matter what kind of existence the opponent was, it could change into the opponent's appearance. If it was lucky, it could even inherit the opponent's physique and ability. Just like how it could perfectly imitate the third prince's appearance and special physique. It could even directly use the tidal wave technique. Although it was also limited by the same physique as the third prince, strictly speaking, even the third prince himself could only fight it on par with the Beis. But now, it was trying to mimic the 13th prince in front of it. It was just an experiment, but the whole innate ability directly collapsed. If it was a technique or something like that, the backlash alone would be enough to make it suffer. You want to mimic my appearance? The 13th prince gently shook his head. His gray eyes kept moving, looking very strange. Hearing Dariachi's breathing getting heavier and heavier, and seeing his bloodshot eyes, the 13th prince nodded in satisfaction and said, "That's why I said that you guys don't know what kind of power I got after I died at the northern frontier. How can an ordinary person be qualified to spy on the territory of a saint?" When the 13th prince's roar ended, blood was already flowing out of Dariachi's ears. It was as if his eardrums were shattered by this roar. Chapter 1089. Although the 13th prince's cultivation could only be compared to those who had just entered the void realm, he was a special existence. After all, he was one of the 9 saints, the hungry ghost path's path lord. Once the Tianwu world completed the 3 realms and 6 paths, the 13th prince would become one of the strongest existences in this world. Dariachi's mimicry was not an ability to imitate someone's appearance. Since he could disguise himself as the 3rd prince, it meant that his mimicry could also imitate someone's origin and physique. Such an ability could be said to be a terrifying talent in any world. But the problem was that the mimicry had to be built on the foundation of power. If an ordinary person had such talent and could mimic himself as a Heaven Star border cultivator, it was not impossible. However, he might not even be able to last for a breath's time before being blown up by the terrifying aura energy. Lin Yuan did not know how it was like in other worlds, but in the Tianwu world's cultivation system, other than demons who were born with strong physiques, no matter what cultivation method one cultivated, one had to cultivate a martial cultivation method when they entered the foundation establishment stage. They had to use spiritual items, pills, demon cores, and other cultivation resources to continuously strengthen their physique. The more perfect this stage was, the higher their future achievements would be. Therefore, one's family background could be said to be a huge threshold that determined a cultivator's future potential. Even the northern frontier would only give out a portion of the resources to nurture new people. It was barely enough, but definitely not enough to reach the foundation establishment stage. Unless the person's talent reached a certain level, then the Northern Frontier Academy would spare no effort to nurture them. The stronger one's physique, the more aura energy they could contain. And from a long-term perspective, the amount of aura energy could determine a cultivator's future limit. Even at a basic level, it determined a cultivator's ability to fight continuously and explode in an instant. With Dariachi's cultivation, mimicking Heaven Star border cultivators and Void Realm cultivators was not a problem. He could even mimic Tao Initiation Realm cultivators. But one of the 9 saints. Just wait to be stuffed to death. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan grinned and looked at the blood chi demon wolf with a mocking gaze. He said, "Looks like our bet has not even officially started, but the result is already decided." That's not necessarily true. Although the blood chi demon wolf's eyes were slightly cold, Lin Yuan did not see any signs of panic. Dariachi suddenly took a deep breath and looked at the 13th prince in shock. He said in a deep voice, "It seems like you are right. 3rd prince had plotted against you and wanted you to die in the north. However, you benefited from the misfortune and obtained a power that 3rd prince couldn't even comprehend." "No, even I can't comprehend such a terrifying power." At this point, the transformation on Dariachi's body suddenly froze. A thin layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead as he said, "I can't analyze your power, but my intuition tells me that if I continue to mimic you, I'm afraid I will explode and die. I thought that 3rd brother's special physique was already powerful enough. I didn't expect you." Before he could finish his sentence, strands of black mist spread out from Dariachi's body. In the blink of an eye, the power that the 13th prince had devoured changed owners and returned to Dariachi's control. The more powerful the ability, the more restrictions it will face. Although I can barely use it once, I don't believe that you can use it again so soon. Dariachi opened his mouth and revealed a sinister smile. He roared, "Then, let's take this. My strongest attack." Devour was the profound of the hungry ghost path. At the same time, it was also one of the most basic abilities of the hungry ghost path's path master. It could even be said that the path master of the hungry ghost path relied on devouring to grow. This power that the natives of the Tianwu world couldn't understand was just a small skill in the eyes of the path master of the hungry ghost path. However, even a small skill couldn't hide the power of devour. In the eyes of a cheat player like Lin Yuan, devour was a type of skill. Furthermore, it had a very long cooldown. Every time he used devour, he would need a total of 49 days to cool down. Of course, this was what the system style said. In the orthodox cultivation system, these 49 days should be the ability obtained from digesting or refining the devour. However, the smile on the 13th prince's face became slightly twisted. Black mist spread out from his mouth again. He laughed sinisterly. That's right. I can't devour this power a second time. However, who told you that you can use this attack? Dariachi's expression changed slightly. Although the mimicry didn't succeed, it did imitate part of the hungry ghost path's ability. Therefore, he could also see the strange power of the hungry ghost path. Although he didn't know what kind of ability the 13th prince used, it was obvious that the 13th prince didn't panic at all when the two of them were so close to each other. He didn't even try to dodge. Instead, he directly used a new ability. It was obvious that this new ability could at least resolve the current crisis. Hungry ghost path, whale devour. The 13th prince's voice followed closely behind the black mist. Just as he finished speaking, the black mist had already enveloped the enormous power. A moment later, Dariachi watched as the huge force was torn apart and devoured. Soon after, the 13th prince's deadpan face flushed red for a moment without any warning. The remaining halberd in his hand also fell heavily. Cough! Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Before he could think, Dariachi had already been sent flying. Fast! Too fast! He didn't even see how the 13th prince had attacked. He only knew that the moment the enormous force was torn apart, he had already been sent flying backwards. Was he countered again? No. Dariachi landed on the ground and kicked up a huge cloud of dust. A huge crater was formed. The injury wasn't fatal, but it wasn't a light injury that could be healed in a short time. Dariachi's eyes were obviously filled with a blank expression. The force that landed on his body was definitely less than 4 million Jin. If it was that kind of force, not to mention the fact that he couldn't withstand it in his incomplete state, even if he was at his peak state, he would probably be smashed into a pile of meat paste. However, when the sharp pain entered his mind, Dariachi also realized the extent of his injury. His chest collapsed, his spine shattered, his blood vessels burst, his internal organs were damaged. Chapter 1090. Even a Daluo Golden Immortal wouldn't be able to save a mortal from such injuries. However, for a great demon like Dariachi, who had reached the desolate demon realm and could use the power of incense to a certain extent, it wasn't a fatal injury. He would be able to recover from his injuries in at most 2 hours. However, to be able to injure him to such an extent, the power of that blow was definitely more than 500,000 kilograms. This didn't make sense. 500,000 kilograms of power wasn't rare. Even if a cultivator in the later stages of the Heaven Star Border realm attacked with all his strength, it would be around 500,000 kilograms. This was also why the third prince, who cultivated the tidal ruin ending technique, was so terrifying. Once the Heaven Star Border third prince unleashed his full strength, his third punch could reach 4 times the power of a Heaven Star Border realm cultivator. He wouldn't even lose to a Netherworld realm cultivator, let alone a cultivator in the same realm. If he didn't hold back, anyone in the same realm would die from this third punch. However, the upper limit of power was one thing, and normal attacks were another. Even a cheat like Lin Yuan would need to lay down a foundation if he wanted to reach his current limit. Unless he used a skill like the Tail of the Sea Conqueror, he wouldn't be able to reach his limit in one blow. However, the 13th prince didn't make any moves. He didn't even use his aura energy. He just shouted the word "whale swallow" and smashed out with his halberd. The power he unleashed was far more than 500,000 kilograms. Do you know how the whale race in the endless sea hunts? I've seen it in some ancient documents. The 13th prince walked casually to the crater created by Dariachi and said, "The members of the whale race are all huge in size. Even a young whale race can carry the imperial city of the Shenwu dynasty on its back. A large ocean can only support one of these creatures." Despite their huge size and unparalleled power, the whale race never hunts them. They only need to swim in the endless sea. Every time they open their mouths to breathe, a lot of sea beasts and beasts will be sucked into their mouths. If they are lucky, they can wait for the next breath to escape. If they are unlucky, they will be directly swallowed into their stomachs for digestion. My way of swallowing is to imitate the way whales eat. The essence of the hungry ghost realm was greed and devouring. No matter what the target was, whether it was living beings, energy, or even some weak laws, they could all be devoured by the hungry ghost realm. However, the real world was not the same as a game. Not everyone had a fixed model and skill. After grasping the power of the hungry ghost realm, how to use it and how to play with it depended on the master of the hungry ghost realm. Whale swallow was created by the 13th prince by imitating the way whales ate. Even Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. His level was obviously higher than that of the 13th prince and Dariachi. Therefore, even without the 13th prince's explanation, he could understand how this whale swallow worked. To put it simply, whale swallow was to use the power of the hungry ghost realm to directly swallow the target into one's mouth. There was no need to chew or digest. Within a breath, the second stage of a whale swallow would be carried out, and a portion of the power that was about to be swallowed would be directly spat out. Currently, the conversion rate of the power that the 13th prince spat out was about 40%. In other words, after swallowing 2 million kilograms of power into the hungry ghost realm, the power that was spat out instantly reached 1.6 million kilograms. Furthermore, this skill of his was clearly still in its initial stage. There was a possibility of it being perfected. It looked like the outcome had been decided. Lin Yuan glanced at the blood-chi demon wolf from the corner of his eye. However, he realized that there was still no change in its expression. He could not help but be on guard. He was not afraid that the other party would go back on their words or turn hostile. Although the northern frontier was a new force, it was now extremely rich. It was probably not much worse than a big clan like the hidden wolf demon wolf. At most, they would just go to war. However, the blood-chi demon wolf did not turn hostile, nor did it show any signs of panic after Dariachi was heavily injured. This meant that this battle was not over yet. As expected, the power of these hidden wolf demon wolf was not to be underestimated. Dariachi, who was lying at the bottom of the pit, did not pay any attention to the 13th prince. Instead, his lips were constantly moving, and he was speaking in a language that was hard to understand. However, there was nothing strange about it. It was as if he was just mumbling unconsciously before he died. That was not the common language of the Tianwu world, nor was it the language of the Shuangjin dynasty. Instead, it was a language that Lin Yuan had never heard of before. However, the content seemed to be magical. Even though he could not understand it at all, Lin Yuan was able to understand the meaning behind it. Dragon elephant. Prajna. Scripture. Lin Yuan's eyelids twitched. He had heard of the dragon elephant prajna technique before, but it was only a martial arts technique written by Old Man Jean in his previous life. Of course, if one were to completely follow the description of the dragon elephant prajna technique, it should be considered a xianxia level technique. After all, this technique was a painstaking effort, and the 13th layer of the dragon elephant prajna technique was the limit. The practitioner needed to live for 1,000 years, and after cultivating it, they would have the strength of 13 dragons and 13 elephants. If one did not take into account the factors of cultivation, the strength of one elephant was around 10,000 gene, and the strength of one dragon was equivalent to the strength of 10 elephants. If one were to cultivate this technique to the extreme, one would have the strength of 1,430,000 gene. This level of strength had already surpassed the limits of those cultivators in the Heaven Star border realm. Just what was going on with this hidden wolf demon clan? First, it was the tidal ruin technique, and now it was the dragon elephant prajna technique. Did they really put all their points into strength? However, Lin Yuan was only thinking about it. He did not think that the dragon elephant prajna technique was the dragon elephant prajna technique. Otherwise, could it be that those gods and demons that spread the Tao of cultivation to the Tianwu world were all experts from wuxia novels? Furthermore, Dariachi's injuries were not light. Even standing up in a short period of time would be a problem. Even if he was given a technique similar to the dragon elephant prajna technique, he would need to be able to use it first. Boom! Suddenly, Lin Yuan raised his head and stared at the place where the 13th prince and Dariachi were fighting. His expression changed as he turned his head to look at the blood chi wolf demon. He said coldly, "No wonder you wanted to make this bet with me. So you were confident of winning all along. However, even if you won, can this be considered as Dariachi winning?" Chapter 1091. Hearing that, the blood demon wolf grinned and said, "Black Jiao, your words are really interesting. We agreed before that the two juniors would fight to decide the winner of this battle, but you didn't set any other restrictions. How is the summoning god's secret technique of my clan's juniors not counted as personal strength? Could it be that when fighting against a strong enemy, you wouldn't use such a technique?" The summoning god's secret technique was definitely a taboo existence in the Tianwu world. Just like when Guan Zhaoshan summoned anyone, what she did was no different from sacrificing herself to summon an evil god. The orthodox gods of the Tianwu world actually didn't exist at all. Regardless of whether it was the Yin gods worshipped by the various empires, the northern frontier god system, or the grassland wolf god system, they were all considered wild gods. Even in the age of chaos like his previous world, it would take hundreds of years for them to slowly evolve into a true mythical system. In a world like the Tianwu world that had a cultivation system, gods weren't they just some strong cultivators or monsters? However, there were a few of them, but they couldn't be considered gods. It was just that when humans were still being oppressed by the demonic beasts, a few leaders had appeared. However, due to the fragmentation of the world and the interference of the protectors of the Heaven Gate, even after humans had dominated the Heaven Martial world, there were still no legendary figures like the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Therefore, from a formal point of view, even Lin Yuan can be regarded as a wild god. If he is like the shadow demon Su Yan, and his style of doing things is a little strange and evil, then he can even be regarded as an evil god. But in such a big environment, there were still many summoning god's secret techniques. That was to offer sacrifices to summon a god to assist the summoning god in battle. The strength of the gods was different. Some would give the summoning god some buffs, some would send down a projection to directly kill a strong enemy. Different gods naturally had different requirements. The stronger the god, the bigger the appetite. Moreover, the number of sacrifices was determined by the rules and rituals, and might not necessarily correspond to the god's needs. For example, when Guan Zhaoshan summoned Lin Yuan, it was already considered a high-level ritual, and the sacrifice was Guan Zhaoshan herself. Because from the moment Lin Yuan descended, that woman had been completely erased, and could no longer be reincarnated. Dariachi's summoning god's secret technique might not be as extreme as Guan Zhaoshan's, but it was still a technique of the wolf race. Even Lin Yuan had to be cautious. After a while, a figure slowly formed. With just a cursory glance, one would think that the illusory image looked like an elephant. However, as the illusory image continued to solidify, one could see that the elephant was covered in dark golden dragon scales. There was also a pair of horns on its head. It looked mighty and extraordinary. Dragon Elephant Demonic King. A great demon who had left a legend on the Frost Mirror grassland suddenly flashed in Lin Yuan's mind. He was also a great demon of the grassland who could compete with the grassland wolves at that time under the rule of the grassland wolves. It was said that he had the blood of the Crescent Elephant clan and the Dragon clan. He was born with extraordinary strength and had mastered some secret techniques that only the Dragon clan possessed. He was an extremely powerful demon king. However, with the disappearance of the wolf race of the grassland, the Dragon Elephant Demon King also disappeared in the long river of history. Now, it seemed that the archenemy of the wolf race of the grassland was also in the same boat as the wolf race of the hidden world. Although the summoning mystic technique was rare, there were many people or monsters who secretly practiced it. Even in the world of Lin Yuan's previous life, there were still various kinds of summoning immortals and divine fighting techniques. Although it was not the orthodox way of cultivation, it was also the best among the unorthodox methods. However, the wolf race of the hidden world was too shameless. Dariachi and the 13th Prince's cultivation were about the same. The confrontation between the two of them should be based on their own means. However, Dariachi actually used such a secret technique to summon a projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King after he was seriously injured. Wasn't this clearly showing that he was bullying the 13th Prince? In other words, this battle was a trap that the 13th Prince had prepared for him from the very beginning. No matter who he sent out, Lin Yuan couldn't do it personally because of Dariachi's seniority. Naturally, people like Badu and Kagura couldn't do it either. However, if he chose to send out a junior who was in the late stage of the heaven realm, regardless of the outcome, it would be equivalent to facing a projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King. Although he didn't know how much power this projection had inherited from the real body, it was definitely not easy to deal with. Lin Yuan's gaze was piercingly cold. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and a green light swept out. In the blink of an eye, it had already broken through the restrictions of time and space and appeared above the 13th Prince's head. Summoning God's secret technique. The 13th Prince's gaze turned slightly. He slowly raised his right hand and smiled sinisterly. If that's the case, I won't hold back. As soon as he finished speaking, a round phantom that was wrapped in gray fog suddenly appeared behind the 13th Prince. There seemed to be 6 grooves on the round phantom. However, at this moment, only a scarlet gem and a gloomy gem were embedded in them. The other 4 grooves were empty. The Dragon Elephant Demon King, who had just finished condensing, had a solemn expression. Although he didn't know what kind of means this junior in front of him had used, even he couldn't help but tremble slightly at this moment. It was as if that round phantom was an extremely terrifying treasure. At this moment, a green light suddenly appeared in the sky above the 13th Prince's head. When it didn't move, it revealed the appearance of a willow branch. In the next moment, absolute heaven connection and plain seal. The moment the willow branch appeared, this part of the world was suddenly sealed abruptly. The interference from the outside world couldn't penetrate the space barrier formed by the willow branch. After all, it was born in the primordial chaos and was formed by the law of space. Even in the Eldritch world, there might not be many people who could break through such a seal, let alone the natives of the Tianwu world. More importantly, there was a price to pay for summoning a secret technique. Dariachi, the Dragon Elephant Demon King and the Blood Wolf Demon King had obviously come prepared. The method to summon the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection must have been a method that they had prepared beforehand. After Dariachi summoned the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection, he didn't seem to be affected at all. Obviously, there were only 2 possibilities. One was that the Hidden Wolf tribe had already completed this series of rituals and imitated the unorthodox talisman technique to seal this set of rituals. When necessary, the user would activate the talisman technique to summon the sealed Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection. However, the possibility of this was not high. It was still a mystery who the northern frontier would send out to fight, and the energy sealed in the talisman technique was quite limited. Chapter 1092. As the most outstanding member of the younger generation of the hidden werewolf tribe, Daryachi had the name of Suppress. Hence, once he had to summon the projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. This also proved that the enemy was very strong. Hence, it was impossible to seal up much energy with just talisman techniques. If the enemy could not be dealt a fatal blow before the energy was depleted, the hidden werewolf tribe would be the ones to lose in the end. Lose. This option was absolutely unacceptable to the hidden werewolf tribe, who would do anything to win and even bully the weak. Therefore, the current situation was very obvious. The hidden wolf clan should have used some kind of taboo method during the summoning ritual to transfer the price that Daryachi should have paid to other people or demonic beasts. It was only under such circumstances that Daryachi could summon the Dragon Elephant Demon King without being affected. But now, absolute heavenly connection, dimensional seal. In this sealed world, before the 13th prince, Daryachi, and the Dragon Elephant Demon King fought to the death, unless Lin Yuan took the initiative to retrieve the willow branch, the external forces would not be able to affect this world at all. The price of summoning the projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King would also be borne by Daryachi himself. Black Jiao, how dare you interfere in this battle? The blood werewolf tribe's expression changed. It stared at Lin Yuan fiercely again. Lin Yuan remained silent. He only turned his head slowly and his gaze met the blood werewolf tribes for a moment. However, it was only for a moment because the moment Lin Yuan turned his head, the blood werewolf tribe suddenly felt a sense of fear. It had a premonition that if it continued to speak, this Black Jiao would definitely make it pay an unimaginable price. Lin Yuan stared at the blood demon wolf with its head lowered for a moment. Suddenly, he swung his tail, and the picture of the sealed world appeared not far in front of him again, like a projector. At this moment, Lin Yuan said slowly, "Previously, when you came to look for this king, you wanted to have a bet between the younger generation. This king gave you a chance because it was not easy for the grassland werewolf tribe to have a long history. Now that you want to bully the younger generation, this king will not hold it against you." What? Are you saying that the Dragon Elephant Demon King is not enough? Is there anyone else who wants to join the battle? Speaking of this, Lin Yuan changed the topic, and his murderous aura overflowed. He growled, "In my opinion, let's not gamble anymore. Tomorrow, I will lead the army to the Frost Mirror grassland. Even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground, I will exterminate your grassland wolf clan." The blood werewolf tribe opened its mouth. No one knew what it was thinking at this moment, but it became strangely silent. In the image before them, Daryachi was already seriously injured. In addition, after the dimension was sealed, all the energy used to summon the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection fell on him. His face was pale and his breathing was weak. Obviously, if Daryachi continued to maintain the existence of the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection, he would probably exhaust himself to death even without the 13th prince's help. Lin Yuan's gaze shifted slightly. Even if Daryachi did not care about his own life, he could only maintain the existence of the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection for 5 breaths. However, he did not even intend to admit defeat. This also meant that they probably thought that the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection would be able to kill the 13th prince within these 5 breaths. At that time, even if both sides were to perish together, Daryachi would die in his hands. On the other hand, the 13th prince would be killed by the projection. If they were to be calculative, the northern region was indeed at a disadvantage. On the other side, the northern frontier is a good move. The Dragon Elephant Demon King's gaze shifted slightly and landed on the 13th prince. He said in a deep voice, "However, this dimension is sealed. Although I can't break it, I guess you can't do anything either. It seems that the Black Jiao is really careless. He dares to let a junior like you be sealed in this dimension with me. It seems that you are not that important to the Black Jiao." When he spoke up to hear, a bright light flashed in the Dragon Elephant King's eyes, and he said with a smile, "Why don't you join my clan? I can guarantee that the Black Wyrm will absolutely be unable to harm you at all." The 13th prince smiled and shook his head. The reincarnation disc behind him rotated again and a black light shot towards the Dragon Elephant Demon King. The Dragon Elephant Demon King narrowed his eyes. After all, he was a Grand Demon King who had been famous for many years. He had also worked together with the Hidden Wolf tribe to harvest the faith of the people of the Frost Mirror Grassland. Although he had not reached the limit of what the Tianwu world could bear, he was still much stronger than an ordinary Demon King. With a single glance, it was able to discern that this black light was probably not easy to block. Especially the resentment and baleful aura contained within the black light. It was something that even it feared like a tiger. Once it was tainted by it, this projection of its would probably collapse in less than 3 breaths of time. If it was even more serious, it might even injure its main body and cripple a few hundred years of bitter cultivation. Boom! The Dragon Elephant Demon King let out a furious roar. Boundless blood chi burst out from his illusory body. In the blink of an eye, the blood chi collided with the black light and was struck down. When it fell to the ground, it had already turned into a pool of viscous liquid. What a powerful black light! The moment they exchanged blows, the Dragon Elephant Demon King made a rough judgment. After all, he had lived for so many years. Even if he did not have enough incense to make a qualitative change in his strength, his experience could not be faked. In a flash, the Dragon Elephant Demon King looked at the reincarnation disc behind the 13th prince with a hint of greed in his eyes. He could tell that the Black Jiao had isolated this part of the world not because he was worried that the Grassland Wolf tribe would have other backup plans, but because he was worried that the Dragon Elephant Demon King would notice the abnormality of the reincarnation disc and choose to escape. The Black Jiao had evil intentions. At the beginning of this battle, it was hard to tell what the Dragon Elephant Demon King's mentality was. However, when the Grassland Wolf tribe shamelessly invited the Dragon Elephant Demon King to deal with the 13th prince, the Black Jiao had already made up his mind. No matter what the outcome of this battle was, the Black Jiao would order his subordinates to destroy the Grassland Wolf tribe. Even if the Dragon Elephant Demon King saw through this and refused to participate in the battle and become an enemy of the Black Jiao, it would not have an easy time. Once the Dragon Elephant Demon King was contaminated by the black light from the reincarnation disc, it would definitely hurt its body. There were even some other mysteries that the Dragon Elephant Demon King had not discovered yet. However, this part of the world was still sealed. Even if he had other ideas, he had to brace himself and finish this battle. Otherwise, if Dariachi could not hold on any longer, he would be able to escape. However, when he returned to his original body, the Grassland Werewolf tribe would not let him off easily. Chapter 1093. However, wasn't there a great opportunity in the midst of great danger? The Dragon Elephant Demon King did not know that the stone plate behind the 13th prince was formed by the chi of the netherworld. It was the reincarnation plate that gathered the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Only the Azura path and the Hungry Ghost path were left in the 6 paths. Therefore, the reincarnation plate's power was at most 40%. Otherwise, a mere projection would be destroyed in an instant. However, in the Dragon Elephant Demon King's opinion, the stone plate was definitely a supreme weapon. It was precisely because of the stone plate that Black Jiao was at ease to let the 13th prince fight Dariachi and himself. However, the 13th prince was only in the advanced Heaven Dipper realm. In the eyes of the Dragon Elephant Demon King, he was nothing. If he could kill the 13th prince here and take the stone plate, the Grassland Wolf tribe might not be the ones in charge in the Frost Mirror Grassland. Boom! A thunderous sound suddenly exploded between the heavens and the earth. The Dragon Elephant Demon King had a unique bloodline and his divine power was unparalleled. With the help of the incense, even if he was just a projection, the power that he could unleash in an instant was extremely terrifying. Ignoring Dariachi's feelings, the dragon elephant demon king stepped on the ground and his body flashed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the 13th prince. The 13th prince's expression did not change. However, he retreated and the reincarnation plate spun again. Black and red radiance shot out and collided with the dragon elephant demon king. The dragon elephant demon king's blood boiled. He did not dodge or avoid the reincarnation plate. He did not care that his body might be injured. However, his speed was slowed down. Even so, he was still moving towards the 13th prince. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, every step he took was like a bolt of lightning descending and the mountains and rivers collapsing. Dragon Elephant Demon King, Haribari has learned a lesson. The 13th prince's expression did not change. He put his palms together and a huge Dharma form that was wrapped in a grey deathly aura appeared behind him. This was similar to the Azura King Dharma body that Lin Yuantu summoned during his battle with Lin Yuan. For an existence at the level of the Master of the Six Paths, once he summoned his Dharma body, it meant that the following battle would be a battle of life and death. The hungry ghost Dharma body condensed, and the world around Haribari was suddenly dyed with a layer of pitch-black color. In the next moment, Haribari suddenly pushed out with both hands, and endless black light shot out from the palms of the Dharma body that was over 100 feet tall. Every ray of black light contained an extremely terrifying devouring power, but in this strange scene, the black hungry ghost power was as dazzling as shooting stars. The illusory image and the Dharma idol were on par with each other. On one side, the power of the hungry ghost circled around like a meteor shower, constantly corroding the relatively normal world on the other side. On the other side, the power of blood chi erupted and transformed into countless illusory images of dragons and elephants formed by blood chi, which continuously collided with the black meteor. For a short period of time, it seemed that they were evenly matched, with neither side able to do anything to the other. However, the blood demon wolves that were watching the battle had extremely ugly expressions. This was because ever since the world was sealed, the price of summoning the projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King had been borne by Dariachi. It seemed that Dariachi could at most hold on for 3 more breaths of time. This also meant that after 3 breaths of time, the projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King would definitely collapse, and Dariachi would definitely die in the sacrificial ceremony. At this stage of the battle, they were already the losers. How lively! A somewhat frivolous voice sounded. Immediately, the reincarnation disc that had also become extremely huge behind the hungry ghost Dharma body bloomed with red light. In the next moment, an illusory figure wearing a blood-red robe appeared. No, it was not blood red, but the dark brown color of dried blood. This fellow was originally wearing a snow-white robe, but after countless killings, he allowed the blood of the dead to splash on his white robe and dye it this color. This fellow is very dangerous. The blood demon wolf made a judgment almost immediately. After all, from the Heaven Star border realm onwards, cultivators would have a protective chi around them even when they were unconscious. Unless the other party had the bloodline of some divine beast, otherwise, the powerless blood would not be able to pass through the protective chi and land on the body. Unless the other party wanted to do so and intentionally caused such a situation. Therefore, this person was either a lunatic or a bloodthirsty pervert. Oh. The illusory youth glanced at the hungry ghost Dharma body and smiled. It seems that you are the hungry ghost Dharma body's master? That's great. I thought I would have to be alone for a long time. I didn't expect a new companion to join me so soon. Hungry ghost Dharma body's master? The blood demon wolf's expression changed as it looked at the illusory youth in disbelief. The 13th prince was such a terrifying existence, and this Black Jiao actually had another subordinate. No, not just one. The blood chi demonic wolf looked fearfully at the 4 grooves above the stone plate. If it guessed correctly, the 13th prince, the hungry ghost Dharma body's master, corresponded to the grey gemstone, and this illusory youth represented the red gemstone. Even though it could not sense the aura and the sealed world, the blood demon wolf could still feel that the two gemstones were extremely dangerous and filled with an ominous aura. And there were actually 4 of such existences. Existences in the Heaven Star border realm who were not at a disadvantage in the Demon King realm. And there were 6 of them. The Northern Frontier. No, the power behind the Black Jiao, how powerful was it? The Grassland Wolf tribe had also established a divine system. They had originally thought that Black Jiao, who had just established the Northern Frontier divine system, would not be able to compare with them. However, Black Jiao himself, together with the 2 Northern Frontier gods, Batu and Kagura, had already reached a level that was on par with the Blood Demon Wolf tribe. What would happen if you were to find 6 more existences like the 13th Prince and the Illusory Youth? In the entire Tianwu world, other than the Endless Sea and the Elysium Guardians, who else could be a match for the Northern Frontier? A sense of despair arose inexplicably and instantly enveloped the Blood Demon Wolf. When the Blood Demon Wolf looked at the Black Jiao again, a look of reverence appeared on its face. However, no matter how shocked it was, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes did not waver. Obviously, all of this was within his expectations. Even the possibility that the Dragon Elephant Demon King would come was probably detected by the Black Jiao the moment the Blood Demon Wolf proposed the wager. Therefore, the one who accepted the challenge was the 13th Prince, the Hungry Ghost Dharma Body's master. Lord Dragon King, we admit defeat. From today onwards, the Blood Chi Demon Wolf swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and said. Chapter 1094. There's no need for that. This king has never been interested in your bet. Lin Yuan suddenly interrupted the Blood Demon Wolf. Then, he said slowly, while you're wasting your time with this king, I'm guessing that the Shuangjin dynasty's army has already been defeated by the Great Wall of the Northern Frontier. However, you don't have to worry. The Northern Frontier's army won't be able to enter the Frost Mirror grassland so quickly. We won't send out a nameless army. Won't send out a nameless army. The Blood Demon Wolf's expression changed. All of a sudden, it recalled the Black Flood Dragon's inexplicable actions. He had actually disregarded the friendship between the North and the Hingduan Mountains and directly marched into the Hingduan Mountains. He had even ignored the covetous heavenly demons of the Central Plains and the invading Frost Mirror cavalry outside the Great Wall and gathered a large number of troops to wage war against the Monster King's court. From a strategic point of view, Black Jiao's actions were absolutely stupid. After all, no matter how the Hingduan mountain range changed, it was impossible for them to fall out with the Northern Frontier. After all, the actual ruler of the Northern Frontier was Black Jiao. Therefore, the Black Flood Dragon's previous actions were as stupid as turning around and punching his ally in the face instead of thinking about how to fight the enemy when facing a powerful enemy. However, the Blood Demon Wolf didn't think so anymore. Although the army of the northern region had suffered some losses in the Hingduan Mountains, both sides ended the farce in an extremely absurd manner before the real battle began. More importantly, due to the concealment of some strange forces, no one knew what had happened in the Hingduan Mountains during that period of time. However, everyone knew that the Northern Frontier settled the dispute with the Hingduan mountain range and severely injured the demon venerable of the southern wilderness. Not only did they destroy the Yun country's army, but they also uprooted the entire Yun country's imperial court. Even the new king of the Yun country was a young man who was adopted from a side branch of the imperial family instead of the original imperial family. In this chaos, he even destroyed the secret alliance between the demon venerable of the southern wilderness and the Yun country. Driven by greed, the demon venerable of the southern wilderness attacked a large number of the Yun country's territories. The Qing River Empire was trembling, and the Sky Demon army seemed to be sleepwalking. Then, after the Northern Frontier readied their armaments, their first target would definitely be the Shuangjin dynasty. However, if the Northern Frontier didn't make a move at this time, who would? The demonic beasts of the Hingduan mountain range. Previously, when the Shinwu dynasty was still around, the Shuangjin dynasty sent troops to loot a burning house and suffered heavy casualties. This time, when they attacked the northern frontier, they suffered heavy casualties under the northern frontier's Great Wall. It could be said that all the tribes on the grassland had no soldiers left except for those who hadn't reached adulthood and were too old to ride horses. If the demonic beast tide broke out at this time, it would definitely be a tragic massacre. At that time, the demonic beasts would wreak havoc on the Frost Mirror grassland, and the northern frontier would send troops to the Shuangjin dynasty to drive the demonic beasts away. What else could be more justifiable than this? They couldn't expect the neighboring Deadwood Empire to send troops to support the Shuangjin dynasty, could they? To put it bluntly, the Deadwood Empire and the Shuangjin dynasty had been enemies for generations. The possibility of them sending troops to support the Shuangjin dynasty was probably not much higher than the possibility of the southern wilderness demonic beast range returning the Yun nation territory to Zhao. In addition, Lin Yuan still had the 13th prince as his trump card. When the demonic beasts were repelled, the 13th prince would step up and inherit the throne. On the surface, the structure of the seven empires would still be maintained. However, in reality, the northern frontier would be the dominant force and take over the territories of two empires. More importantly, the 13th prince was now an important part of Black Flood Dragon's military force. No matter what Black Flood Dragon's original intentions were, he was now Black Flood Dragon's loyal subordinate. Therefore, when the time came, the new Northern Territory god system would be the one to spread across the Frost Mirror Prairie. The legend of the prairie wolf god would gradually be replaced or even cut off, and it would directly affect their clan. However, if they were to fight against the northern frontier, let's not talk about whether they could defeat the northern frontier. Even if they could, so what? Those guys were still alive at that time. It was hard to guarantee that they would not follow the clues and find the secret place of the Grassland Wolf clan. At that time, just like what the Black Zhao said, the entire Grassland Wolf clan would be exterminated. No, Lord Dragon King, you promised. You promised that if the result of the bet was out and we lost, the Prairie Wolf tribe would disband the god system and join your northern region. The Blood Demonic Wolf clan was obviously flustered. However, its panic did not affect Lin Yuan at all. Lin Yuan just tilted his head slightly and said indifferently, "Yes, I did give you a chance. However, when you cheated and planned to bully the Dragon Elephant Demon King, the bet between us no longer existed. Now, you only have two choices. You can either retreat before this king's army arrives at the Frost Mirror grassland, or you could try and see if you are a match for the northern frontier." Black Zhao. The Blood Demonic Wolf clan's voice was almost distorted as it roared, "Do you really think we are made of mud? If you insist on starting a war, I think your subordinates in the northern region will definitely suffer heavy casualties. At that time, can you still resist the invasion of the heavenly demons? Can you still compete with the southern wilderness? Will those demonic beasts in the Hingduan Mountains also miss the chance to encroach on the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce? You'd better think it through." Boom! In response to the Blood Demonic Wolf clan's words, Lin Yuan burst forth with a demonic chi as mighty as the Wei River. When this king was still a demonic beast in the Spirit Awakening realm, his opponent was the Mountain-Shaking Ape clan. Later, when this king reached the Wisdom realm, he faced the King Crocodile of the Red Flame Swamp. The mountain-blocking city was destroyed by this king, and the 7 border cities of the Shinwu dynasty all fell into the hands of this king. After that, whether it was the Endless Sea, the Sky Demon, or even the Guardian of the Heaven Gate, which one of them made this king afraid? Lin Yuan sneered and glanced at the Blood Demonic Wolf clan from the corner of his eyes. He said mockingly, "This king knows that you are not made of mud, but have you ever seen this king fight against those soft persimmons since he was born? In other words, if you were really made of mud, this king would not be interested in fighting against you." The Blood Demonic Wolf clan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He roared, "If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Today, this god must kill you, Black Jiao, who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Then let's fight." Lin Yuan grinned. With a thought, he unsealed the battlefield that was about to decide the outcome of the battle. The willow branch turned into a green light again and directly sealed the space where Lin Yuan and the blood demonic wolf clan were. This king then said with a hideous smile, previously, this king was still thinking that since the grassland wolf clan had already suppressed themselves to this extent, this king had no reason to fight against you. Chapter 1095. Had he been tricked by the Black Jiao again? The blood chi wolf demon's expression changed slightly. Suddenly, it was filled with endless anger. It suddenly realized what the Black Jiao's actions meant. Previously, they did not seal off the battlefield because they wanted to prove that the Prairie Wolf clan had tampered with the bet. They had invited the Dragon Elephant Demon King, who had been famous for a long time, to deal with a junior like the 13th Prince. After that, they sealed off the battlefield to prevent others from spying on them. They did not want the 13th Prince to be exposed to the world. Especially after the Heaven and Earth seal was lifted, the projection of the young man and the Dragon Elephant Demon King disappeared one after another. Almost at the end, Dariachi died and the projection of the Dragon King Demon King disappeared. On the other hand, the 13th Prince had already retracted his Dharma form. His body was riddled with injuries and it was obvious that he had been beaten into a sorry state. There was no sign of him being on par with Dariachi or even suppressing the Dragon Elephant Demon King. It was obvious that he had been dodging pathetically and had dragged on until Dariachi died before he finally won this round. And now, the Blood Chi Wolf Demon King, he actually took the initiative to declare war on the Black Jiao. Damn it! What a cunning Black Jiao! It wasn't a fool, so it naturally knew what these images meant to those spies. After all, the Tianwu continent was vast and boundless. Even if the various sea demon clans in the Endless Sea were not included, there were still many god systems. The Black Jiao's actions were only to appease the neighboring god systems and cover up the ferocious face of the northern frontier god system. He pushed all the blame to the Prairie Wolf clan. It was as if the Prairie Wolf clan was aggressive and wanted to declare war on the northern frontier. This Black Jiao, his ambition was too big. The Blood Chi Wolf Demon King reacted almost instantly. Its eyes were extremely gloomy. If the Black Jiao went to war with the Prairie Wolf tribe at all costs, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the neighboring god systems would be afraid. If the Black Jiao attacked the other god systems one day, the members of those god systems would gather together, which would cause a lot of trouble. Good, very good. Black Jiao, do you really think you have us under your thumb? The Blood Chi Wolf Demon's eyes flashed. It did not wait for Lin Yuan to make the first move. Its blood chi suddenly burst forth, and the terrifying power instantly destroyed the surrounding ground, flowers, and trees. Seeing the Blood Chi Demon Wolf attack, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed. At this moment, he suddenly realized that although the Blood Chi Demon Wolf in front of him was not the Blood Chi Demon Wolf's real body, the Blood Chi Demon Wolf did not cultivate the evil Tao that he had imagined. Instead, it was a method that was very similar to how human experts entered the Tao through martial arts. It mainly relied on the power of its own chi and blood, which could be said to be the most masculine and masculine. The Blood Chi Demon Wolf's body was also not refined by the Blood Chi Demon Wolf's real body. It was separated from the Blood Chi Demon Wolf's real body. Based on this point alone, the threat level of the Blood Chi Demon Wolf's real body increased by several levels in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan also focused his mind. The black dragon tail behind him swung, and a large amount of demon power turned into the nether realm black water, which instantly formed the Dharma form of a black dragon. As soon as the Dharma form of the dragon was formed, it directly rushed toward the Blood Chi Demon Wolf. In a flash, the nether realm black water collided with the powerful blood chi. Just a moment of contact caused a terrifying explosion. However, the strange thing was that neither Lin Yuan nor the blood qi demon wolf heard any sound. Blood kept flowing out of their mouths and noses. Obviously, they were injured by the aftershock of the explosion. Louder silence. It was easy to imagine how terrifying the power of this collision was. Although the two of them looked equally miserable, the blood qi demon wolf was obviously at a disadvantage. This was because under the shock wave that swept over, even though it had used all its strength, it was still pushed back 5 steps before it could completely dissipate the force. On the other hand, Lin Yuan remained where he was, looking at it mockingly. Buzz. The blood qi demon wolf stretched its muscles and bones, and a crisp sound came from its body. At the same time, an even more powerful blood qi exploded. Burning essence blood and exploding with full power. Interesting. Lin Yuan looked at the increasingly powerful blood qi and then looked at the blood qi demon wolf that was gradually becoming wilted and shriveled. For a moment, he was actually a little absent-minded. As expected, the so-called genius and demon were just names that were blown out of proportion. However, those who had climbed to the top step by step could not be underestimated. The blood qi demon wolf was clearly an incarnation of the blood qi of a fake god of the wolf tribe on the grassland, but it was only slightly inferior to him in a head-on collision. If he was facing the real body of the blood qi demon wolf, he would not have had such an advantage. The increasingly powerful blood qi did not collide with Lin Yuan. Instead, it constantly revolved around the gradually weakened blood demon wolf. After about 4 or 5 breaths, the blood demon wolf suddenly looked up to the sky and howled. The blood qi that had spread out actually formed a dharma form of the blood demon wolf that stood up in front of it. The dharma form of the blood demon wolf was about 1,000 feet tall. Yes, burning essence blood and exploding with full power. The blood qi demon wolf smiled bitterly and squinted its eyes. Black Jiao, I only have the strength for one more blow. If you can survive this blow, then my real body will be waiting for you on the frost mirror grassland. As soon as it finished speaking, the dharma form of the blood-red werewolf took a step forward and suddenly came in front of Lin Yuan. It was so fast that Lin Yuan did not even have time to react. He only saw the blood-red wolf claw hitting his abdomen. Puff! The sound of flesh being penetrated was heard. Lin Yuan's eyes widened slightly. Golden blood kept flowing from the corners of his mouth. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. When a snake grew up, it became a python. When a python grew up, it became a flood dragon, and the flood dragon became a dragon. Regardless of whether this statement is reliable or not, Lin Yuan is indeed an existence that evolved from a snake into a flood dragon. Although he can be said to be a different species from the snake, in fact, he still retains some snake characteristics, such as cold-bloodedness, fear of cold, and weakness. To beat a snake, one had to hit it 7 or 3 inches. The 3 inches was the most vulnerable part of a snake's bones, and the 7 inches was the heart. According to the species of snake, the 3 inches and 7 inches were located in different places. Generally speaking, the 3 inches and 7 inches were the 2 most important weaknesses of a snake. The dharma form of the blood-red werewolf pierced through his scales, flesh, and grabbed his heart with just one blow. F***ck. Lin Yuan cursed in his heart. The thing he was most worried about had happened. After all, he was only in the wild demon realm. When facing a real expert, although he could rely on the system and the power of incense to fight, if he encountered an existence that could kill him in a second, no matter how many tricks he had, he would not be able to use them. Chapter 1096. That's impossible. The blood demon wolf's expression changed abruptly. It was as if it was not Lin Yuan who had been pierced through, but it was itself. As powerful as Lin Yuan was, he could already enter the state of minute subtlety. Even without using his eyes, he could feel all the changes in his body, such as the flow of his blood, the squirming of his muscles. Therefore, he could feel that the Dharma form of the blood demon wolf had clenched hard, but its target was not his heart. In other words, although it had pierced through the blood demon wolf's heart and reached its claws, it had grabbed nothing. How could that be? Lin Yuan looked at the Dharma form of the blood demon wolf that was gradually fading away in front of him. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. After all, the blood demon wolf was in existence at the level of a false god. It could be said that it was a demon king at the peak level and could use the power of incense to fight. Even in the untainted world, it was not a weakling that could be killed easily. But why would an existence of this level make such a fatal mistake in battle? It had clearly grasped the vital point, but it missed when it was sure to hit the target. Puff! Lin Yuan opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of golden blood. His eyes were gloomy. The feeling of walking in front of the gates of hell was indeed not a good feeling. It wasn't that he was afraid of death. For someone like him who had been through a blood feud in his previous life, death wasn't something that was hard to accept. When the people he cared about him died one by one in front of him, he was already considered a dead man. The only thing he could not accept was that he had the power to take revenge, but he had fallen before he could do so. How could you not have a demon core? The blood demon wolf looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. It muttered something, but it answered Lin Yuan's doubts. For existences who could use the power of incense, having their hearts crushed was indeed not a serious injury. Take Neza for example. Even Tai could use the lotus roots to create a new body for him. So, even if the body was completely destroyed, let alone one or two vital parts, as long as one was willing to consume enough incense, everything could be regathered. Therefore, although the blood chi wolf demon had pierced through Lin Yuan's heart, it did not choose to crush Lin Yuan's heart. Instead, it wanted to crush Lin Yuan's monster core and destroy his cultivation. After all, in the eyes of the blood demon wolf, Lin Yuan could use the power of incense, and he had killed 2 demon kings before. It never occurred to the blood demon wolf that Lin Yuan was just a demon beast of the wild demon realm. He could only use the power of incense with the help of the system, and he was far from reaching the threshold of a god. However, the problem of the blood chi demon wolf had indeed stumped Lin Yuan. Monster core. When wild beasts absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to gain intelligence and become demon beasts, they would reach the spirit awakening realm. During the process from the spirit awakening realm to the wisdom realm, a demon beast's body would condense an energy ball made of demon power. This energy ball stored all the demon power, and at the same time, it acted as a node, similar to a human's Dantian sea of chi. It could be said that without a monster core, a demon beast could not cultivate. To a demon beast, a monster core was equivalent to a spiritual treasure. During a battle, a demon beast could even spit out its own monster core to injure the enemy. The stronger the demon beast's cultivation, the more powerful its monster core would be. But on the other hand, once the monster core was in the hands of others, it was equivalent to the demon beast's life being controlled by others. With just a thought, the demon beast could completely turn into a beast. In addition to these functions, a monster core was also a great supplement for human cultivators and other demon beasts. Some demon beasts with precious bloodlines could condense a monster core that did not contain any impurities. It could even be directly swallowed, allowing one to obtain at least 70% of the demon beast's cultivation when it was alive, as well as some other benefits. Monster cores were also an indispensable ingredient in the process of refining many extraordinary pills. The main purpose of the existence of the demon slayers was to hunt down the demon beasts in the Hingduan mountain range, reducing the number of demon beasts in each tribe, and reducing the number of demon beasts that would be needed to face in the next beast tide. However, as time passed, the demon slayers had completely turned into hunters. Their main purpose was to hunt down various demon beasts and exchange their flesh, materials, and monster cores for money or resources. Previously, when Mountain Blocking City was still around, there were many demon slayers who coveted Lin Yuan's monster core. However, the problem was that Lin Yuan knew very well that he never had a monster core. Whether it was demon power or Joss flame power, they were all values on the system panel. Only when Lin Yuan needed them could he use the system's power to mobilize them. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that he had never faced this problem head-on before. Moreover, there seemed to be a mysterious force that constantly disturbed him, preventing him from thinking about this problem. Only at this moment, when the Blood Chi Wolf Demon's sneak attack failed, did Lin Yuan finally wake up from his daze. This seemed to be something that did not make sense, but everything was so logical. After all, Lin Yuan had cultivated to this stage, and it could be said that he had never seriously cultivated for a single day. His strength was completely built on killing, constantly killing other living creatures, and obtaining attribute points through the system to strengthen himself. Until now, he seemed to have no idea what a proper cultivation method was. Putting aside the spiritual awakening and wisdom connection realms, Lin Yuan should have sensed that something was wrong when he reached the Mountain Lord realm. What was a Mountain Lord? To be more mysterious, demonic beasts that had reached the Mountain Lord realm and River Lord realm were already existences similar to mountain gods and river gods. Demonic beasts that had reached this realm would usually have their own territory. In this territory, demonic beasts of that realm would be greatly strengthened, and they would even be able to mobilize the power of the rules to a certain extent. Just like the three-eyed ape, who had paid the price of his life to temporarily enter the desolate demon realm. He had almost killed the Liu clan's patriarch with a single punch. As for Lin Yuan himself, although he had territories like the Stoneclaw Forest and the northern frontier, he had never been strengthened, nor had he had the opportunity to feel the power of the rules. He was completely a demonic beast whose physical fitness and demonic power had reached the standard of the Mountain Lord realm. He had none of the special techniques that every realm should have. And now, the desolate demon realm was the same. What was a desolate demon? When demonic beasts come out of the mountains, the world would become a wasteland. This was similar to the birth of the drought demon, a powerful force that could dry land for thousands of miles. However, Lin Yuan still had not grasped the power related to this. All along, he had relied on his powerful attributes to fight with his enemies. At this stage, he had even completely relied on the power of faith, and did not display any of the abilities that a demonic beast of this realm should have.